Chapter 101. With the confrontation between the two elders concluded, the street brawl ended in Mr. Weasley's favor. The opinions of the defeated are often disregarded, a sentiment Ethan shared. He was well aware that in the original narrative, it was Lucius Malfoy who had cunningly slipped Voldemort's Horcrux diary among Ginny's books. Although Malfoy might not have known it was a Horcrux, he was indirectly responsible for the Basilisk incident that year. However, Ethan had no plans to intervene in this matter, at least not until he discovered a method to handle the Horcruxes. The potential dark magic concealed within them by Voldemort was a concern. Certainly, if he mastered the Great Splitting technique, he would immediately apply it to the diary. Lockhart, intrigued by the altercation, even suggested to a reporter, "Could you mention the fight in your article? Let's say Arthur Weasley and Lucius Malfoy were dueling over my book." Afterward, Ethan parted ways with the Weasley family, having arranged to meet Ron and the others at his house daily for a book copying project. Hermione and Siri also went their separate ways to shop. Ethan visited the Magical Creatures store, where he inquired with Miss Hayden about obtaining tail hair from a nine-tailed fox. During Christmas, he had spent 50 galleons for information on various mythical creatures, particularly the nine-tailed fox. This time, Miss Hayden had both disappointing and exciting news. The unfortunate news was that Eastern poachers had mistakenly hunted the lesser-known pipe fox instead of the nine-tailed fox, yielding no results. The exciting news was the discovery of feathers from the legendary feathered serpent in the ruins of a Mayan wizard's site in South America, now priced at over 1,000 galleons. Without hesitation, Ethan decided to purchase it. The feathered serpent, known for its divinity, high intelligence, and perception, could serve as an alternative main ingredient for the permanent fox's cunning elixir, or possibly for an owl's wisdom elixir. To ensure he secured this rare item, Ethan left 2,000 galleons with Miss Hayden, instructing her to contact him directly if more funds were needed. Given the slow logistics in the wizarding world, Ethan anticipated receiving the item in about a month, just in time for the new semester and his second wild ritual. The visit to the magical beast shop was fruitful, unlike his experience at Slugjig's pharmacy. A tornado had devastated the only Ream cattle sanctuary in the United States, leading to a complete halt in Ream cattle blood production for the year, rendering all prior reservations void. The key ingredient for the eternal cow power elixir was now unavailable. However, Ethan had already decided against using Ream cow blood as the primary ingredient, considering the idea of transforming into a Ream cow beneath his ambitions. He aimed for a transformation into the most formidable of magical creatures, the dragon. Compared to the mightier fire dragons, the breeding industry for these creatures was more developed within the wizarding world. Opting for dragon blood, which was relatively inexpensive, Ethan instead placed a special order for dragon hearts at Slugjig's pharmacy. Not just one or two, but a dozen, requesting a heart from each of the identified species of fire dragons. Each dragon heart cost him 1,000 galleons on average. Ethan's intention behind acquiring such a variety of dragon hearts was not merely to transform into a fire dragon. He aspired to unravel the essence of the fire dragon's bloodline, aiming for a transformation that transcended the ordinary. Transforming into a real dragon, a majestic creature with 4 legs and 2 wings on its back, is not only a display of immense power, but also of high intelligence and the unique ability to use dragon language magic. This creature reigns supreme among species. In contrast, the fire dragons of the Harry Potter world, with their wings connected to their forelimbs similar to bats, are merely unintelligent beasts. Although these flying drago, NS and fire dragons carry the blood of the giant dragons, their diluted lineage means they lack the grandeur and wisdom of their ancestors, reducing them to mere beasts. Ethan's strategy involves gathering all the different dragon bloodlines within the Harry Potter universe, purifying them to eliminate non-dragon elements, and then merging the remnants to as closely as possible recreate the gene pool of the true dragons. This ambitious project represents a significant undertaking for Slugjig's pharmacy, requiring the collection of 15 or 16 dragon hearts from various species, a task that cannot be completed quickly. Thus, Ethan left a deposit of 8,000 galleons and began a new period of waiting. After their shopping trip, the trio returned to the tower. The following morning, Ron, Harry, and the Weasley twins eagerly made their way to the tower. Harry, already briefed on their plan to create copies and somewhat coerced into participating, brought his complete set of Lockhart's autographs, despite his clear disdain for the man. Learning the scribe spell, even at its most basic level, proved challenging. Ron quickly abandoned the effort, and Harry struggled with it, but the Weasley twins mastered it with ease. "Ethan, I have a proposal," George said excitedly, after they successfully replicated Walking with Trolls, using the scribe spell. "We're not the only ones at Hogwarts who are frustrated with Lockhart. We have the means to address this issue," he continued. "We can use owls to reach out to young wizards who haven't bought Lockhart's books yet and offer them copies at a lower price," Fred added. "The price for a copy could be 1/3 or even 1/4 of the original. After covering our costs, we could still make a profit of 12 to 14 sickles per book." George elaborated. "If you're okay with it, we can start this business," Fred suggested. "You invented Scribe, so you'd contribute the magic authorization as your capital. We'll handle everything else, and we'll split the profits 50-50 with you." George outlined their plan. After considering the proposal for a moment, Ethan nodded in agreement. "It sounds good, and I approve." While he wasn't in dire need of money, the prospect of additional income was welcome. Relying solely on the Philosopher's Stone for income was too conspicuous and risked causing inflation. "Excellent!" George and Fred celebrated with a high five. Upon hearing about the plan, Hermione and Harry also expressed interest. "I know how to copy as well," Hermione volunteered, raising her hand. "And I'll definitely master this spell in the next 2 days," Harry declared, eager to participate. Even Ron, motivated by the prospect of earning some extra pocket money, reconsidered his earlier decision to give up on learning the spell. After some discussion, the twins decided on the financial arrangement. Each book copied would net a profit of 12 to 14 sickles, half of which would go to Ethan. The remaining 6 to 7 sickles would be divided further, with 4 to 5 sickles allocated as the scribe's salary, based on the book's length. This would be the share for Hermione and Harry. The remaining 2 sickles would serve as a service fee for their efforts. Beyond copying books, Hermione and Harry would also take on additional responsibilities to ensure the success of their venture. Product promotion, contacting customers, and purchasing ink and paper were the tasks assigned. Everyone agreed that this method of distribution was fair and satisfactory. On that day, the twins utilized the owls of all those present to send out advertisements, inviting people to purchase discounted copies of the complete works of Lockhart. Even Ethan's Homer and Harry's Hedwig were enlisted to deliver messages. For several days, a flurry of owls came and went over the tower, indicating the operation's busy nature. It became evident that a significant number of young wizards were displeased with Lockhart's attempt to sell books at Hogwarts, and were eager to buy pirated copies at lower prices. On the first day alone, they received orders for 5 sets of books. This small book-copying workshop, situated in Ethan's tower, was bustling with activity. And those 5 sets were just the beginning. As days passed, the number of orders grew so significantly that George and Fred found themselves visiting the paper shop regularly to restock on copying paper. This frequent patronage led Lysa, a muggle girl working at the paper shop, to mistakenly believe the brothers were interested in her. Ethan, seeing his friend's enthusiasm, also pitched in by taking the initiative to review and correct any errors. Given that magic can sometimes lead to mistakes, it was common for the copying process to have errors. Ethan took it upon himself to use the Scholar's Touch spell on every copied book to ensure accuracy. Once a book met his standards, he would mark it with his magical seal. When selecting his magic mark, Ethan inadvertently chose the symbol of intelligence. Update 5.4. Additional update: publishing new books is no small feat. Please consider placing a custom order, and I would appreciate a wave of monthly flower ticket reviews and rewards. If you have tickets, kindly support me, the author. This means a great deal to me. Chapter 102. Time passed swiftly, and in the last week of summer vacation, our small workshop completed its final order, marking the end of our book copying venture. Although life had been challenging for everyone except Ethan during this period, the joy of earning our own galleons was undeniable. Now it was time for the much-anticipated division of earnings. Ethan's share was naturally the largest, amounting to just over 300 galleons. While this sum barely scratched the surface of his potion material expenses, it represented a significant amount for the Weasley family, equating to 2 or 3 months of Arthur's salary. Ethan's ability to earn this money with minimal effort highlighted the immense value of knowledge. As the brains behind the operation and the ones who did most of the groundwork, the Weasley twins were the most industrious and, consequently, the most rewarded. Each received over 80 galleons. After accounting for marketing and logistics expenses, which included stationery and beef jerky for the owls, their net income was slightly less, but still substantially more than their pocket money for the previous year. The other three, Hermione, Harry, and Ron, served as scribes and earned their wages through hard work. Hermione, with her superior quick skills, managed to earn a full 60 galleons after copying more than 170 books. Harry, with his earnings of 40 galleons, and Ron, who reluctantly learned scribe and seized the opportunity, made over 20 galleons. After the money was divided, everyone returned home to share their earnings with their families and improve their living conditions. "It was a pleasure working with you, Ethan," George said before departing. "We'll definitely come back to you for any similar ventures in the future," Fred added loudly. Although Ethan had only provided the spell authorization and taken half of their hard-earned money, the twins were well aware that without the scribe technology to drastically reduce book copying costs, this business would not have been feasible. In today's wizarding society, which lacks fundamental progress in productivity, innovation is key to success. New technologies, demands, or industries are essential for breaking into well-established fields dominated by veterans. Ethan, with his ability to effortlessly create new magic, was not just a source of technological innovation, but also a mentor in navigating the business landscape. "In fact, I'm also very happy to have worked with you," Ethan responded, encouragingly. "You both have a real knack for this. With hard work, you could achieve great things in the future." Ethan was genuinely impressed with the Weasley twins. In the original story, they managed to start a business at school and later run Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes, which became a roaring success. This demonstrated not only their vision and business acumen, but also their exceptional skills in alchemy, potion-making, and innovation. Hearing Ethan's evaluation, the twins were overjoyed and immediately shared their intentions. "In fact, we're considering starting a new business at school," George revealed, but admitted, "For now, it's just a plan." Fred chimed in, "I'll definitely come back to you once we've fleshed it out, Ethan." "Of course," Ethan nodded, his interest piqued. "I look forward to future cooperation." Beyond the scribe business, Ethan found other opportunities during the holiday. He spent time at the Burrow, exchanging ideas with Arthur Weasley on adapting Muggle products. Together, they successfully modified televisions, game consoles, and other household appliances to work without electricity, powered entirely by magic. These devices could access Muggle signals, both paid and free channels, without any cost. Game consoles were similarly adapted, though computers and internet functionality remained a challenge too complex to tackle at the moment. Ethan also met several neighbors in Ottery St. Catchpole Village through the Weasleys, including the remarkable Cedric Diggory family and the Lovegoods, whom he had previously encountered on a beach in Cornwall. September 1st marked the return to school. Ethan and Ciri used teleportation to reach Platform 9 Thwars. Before departing, Ethan concealed his half of the plane in the void, leaving no trace of the tower's original location. This ensured their home remained hidden, accessible only to Ethan via a special passage. To return to the tower from elsewhere, one would need to master the mansion technique, a spell beyond Hermione and Ciri's current abilities. Ethan contemplated creating magical items to facilitate their return when necessary. Upon arriving at the platform, it wasn't long before they were joined by Hermione, who was dropped off by her father, Mr. Granger. Watching his daughter eagerly follow Ethan, Mr. Granger felt a pang of emotion. His little girl was growing up. The trio boarded the train, searching for an empty compartment. This proved difficult, as most were already occupied. Preferring not to mingle with strangers, they continued their search until Siri spotted Luna Lovegood sitting alone in a compartment. They joined her, greeting her warmly. Luna, appearing somewhat eccentric with a necklace of butterbeer corks and her wand tucked behind her ear, was reading The Quibbler upside down. Ethan understood why others might hesitate to join her, fearing her unconventional appearance. However, having visited the tower during the holidays, they were already acquainted and unfazed by her quirks. Ethan then immersed himself in a large book, Fundamentals of Computer Science. His knowledge from his previous life was too advanced for the technology of the time, offering little help in understanding computer principles for magical adaptation. He realized he needed to start from the basics. Meanwhile, Hermione and Siri engaged in light conversation, enjoying the start of their journey back to school. Over the summer vacation, their friendship had deepened, almost without them noticing. Luna observed them through her upside-down magazine as the train began to move. When the food cart came by, Hermione eagerly flagged it down and bought a generous amount of snacks. Having earned pocket money for the first time, she was excited to share her bounty with her friends. The tranquility of the train ride was shattered several hours later by the sound of hurried footsteps. The door to their compartment was flung open, revealing the twins and Ginny, who appeared particularly distressed, her eyes brimming with tears. "I didn't see them here either." Ginny's voice was tinged with desperation. "What's wrong?" Hermione asked, puzzled by Ginny's distress. "It's Harry. Harry's gone," Ginny managed to say through her tears. The atmosphere in the compartment shifted as the gravity of Ginny's words sank in. Chapter 103. Seeing the compartment filled with familiar faces, the twins didn't hesitate to grab 2 bottles of iced pumpkin juice from the pile of snacks and quenched their thirst. They had checked almost all the carriages by now and were nearly exhausted. "Hey, why is Harry missing?" Ethan asked, feigning surprise. "That kid, can he really get lost on a train?" Celie shook her head, bewildered. This was the first time she had encountered someone with such a poor sense of direction. "No, he's not lost," Ginny quickly clarified. "Harry crossed the platform with us. I was the third to last person to cross the wall. Harry was right behind me at that time. There's no way he could have gotten lost." "So, you didn't realize something was wrong until you boarded the train?" Hermione inquired, her tone carrying a hint of reproach. Ginny's face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry. Our family woke up late today and only arrived at the station 5 minutes before the train departed. In the rush, we didn't have time for proper goodbyes, so I didn't notice Harry was missing until I boarded the train." "Have you searched all the carriages?" Hermione continued, her concern for her friend evident. "I'm almost done, but not quite," George interjected. "We started from the rear of the train and worked our way to this carriage. There are at most 3 carriages left to check," Fred explained. At that moment, a faint voice emerged in the carriage. "Did you just say you were third from the last?" Everyone turned to find Luna speaking. While the conversation about Harry unfolded, she had been engrossed behind a magazine, seemingly inconspicuous. Yet, she had been listening intently. "Do you mean," Ginny caught on immediately, "yes, I was the third to last." "And who was the last?" Luna inquired. Ginny, momentarily thrown off by the question, struggled to respond. "What she means is, since you are the third to last and Harry is the second to last, who was the first to last?" Ethan explained thoughtfully. "After all, if Harry, being second to last, didn't catch up, then the last person would have noticed, right?" "Yes, there's also the last one," Ginny exclaimed, suddenly realizing. She looked around, counted on her fingers, and then her eyes widened in shock. "Where's Ron?" "George. Fred. Everyone." The realization that they had been searching for Harry for so long without noticing Ron was also missing was astonishing. Despite Ron's quiet presence, he was still Ginny's brother and the twins' sibling. Ignoring his absence was unthinkable. At that moment, a tapping sound on the window interrupted their thoughts. Ethan and the others turned to see an owl flapping its wings outside the train window, occasionally tapping the glass with its beak to draw attention. It was Helmer. Ethan quickly stood up, opened the window, and let the owl in. Helmer flew into the compartment gracefully, dropping a rolled item in front of Ethan before perching on his shoulder to preen its feathers. Ethan, not rushing to examine the item, first offered a strip of beef jerky to the owl, followed by a small spoonful of water from the snack box. "What did your owl bring you at this time?" Shilly asked curiously. "Let's see. It's the Daily Prophet," Ethan replied. "They don't usually deliver at this time. Must be a special edition." "Interesting. Let me have a look," Shilly said, taking the newspaper and scanning its pages. Soon, an intriguing smile formed on her face. "Hermione, you might want to see this," she suggested, passing the newspaper to the young witch beside her. "It seems exciting, as expected from you Gryffindors," Hermione remarked, taking the newspaper with a puzzled look. As she read the indicated article, her expression shifted dramatically. The initial worry quickly escalated into panic, and her face turned ashen. "What's wrong, Hermione? Did something happen?" Ginny asked, her concern evident in her voice. Harry and Ron, they've taken Mr. Weasley's car without permission, and they actually dared to rev it to Hogwarts, in full view of muggles along the way," Hermione exclaimed, her voice laden with anger. Upon hearing this, the Weasleys were equally stunned. The headline in the newspaper screamed, "Ford Anglia flies, muggles in shock." Hermione continued, reading from the report. "Two muggles in London were convinced they saw an old car flying past the post office building. In Norfolk, Mrs. Hetty Bellis was hanging her laundry. Mr. Angus Fleet reported to the police." It was clear that these were all accounts from Muggle eyewitnesses. The Daily Prophet's efficiency is astonishing. Ethan couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. How can Muggle newspapers be so timely? They usually report on yesterday's events. His comment left everyone speechless. Was this really the time to be pondering the efficiency of newspapers? "Oh no," Ginny wailed. "They're in big trouble." "This is so cool," George and Fred exclaimed in unison. "Not cool at all." Percy, the prefect who had been inspecting the area, interjected. 6 or 7 muggles witnessed this incident, and the news has spread. I can't imagine how many Ministry of Magic staff will be dispatched, or how many memory charms will be needed to erase everyone's memories. And think about Dad, working in the office for the misuse of Muggle artifacts, yet his own son. He's going to face serious scrutiny. Percy, aspiring to work in the Ministry of Magic, understood the gravity of the situation. Now Ginny and Hermione were also fraught with worry. "Ethan, do you think they'll be expelled? Could they go to jail?" Hermione turned to Ethan, seeking reassurance. "Of course not," Ethan comforted her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "In situations like this, just think of Dumbledore. You know the headmaster's stance towards Harry. Considering past events, Dumbledore's influence in the wizarding world is more significant than you might think. So, nothing will happen to them." However, Ethan harbored his own reservations about Dumbledore's apparent favoritism. Seeing Hermione finally relax, Ethan couldn't help but flash a mischievous smile. "But, just because they'll be fine with the Ministry doesn't mean they'll escape consequences at Hogwarts. I'm sure Professor McGonagall will ensure they receive a fair punishment." "Oh no, we might lose so many house points before school even starts. Darn it." Hermione's face paled once more. Yet, it was clear she was the only one overly concerned about this. Ethan and Shirley, both Ravenclaws, and the Weasley twins, notorious for their disregard for house points, were unfazed. As for Ginny and Luna, the 2 first years hadn't even been sorted into houses yet. As night fell, the train neared its destination. The young witches and wizards took turns leaving their compartment, making room for others to change into their school uniforms and cloaks. Eventually, the train slowed to a stop at a dark, small platform. Amidst the hustle and bustle, they disembarked and bid farewell to Luna and Ginny, who were about to embark on the journey all new students must take. The older students boarded the self-driving carriages. Contrary to what some might think, these carriages were pulled by a skeletal, gray-black Pegasus known as a thestral. These mystical creatures, invisible to most, could only be seen by those who had witnessed death. As they made their way to the castle for the first time as returning students, a lavish dinner awaited them in the Great Hall. In the brightly lit auditorium, both new and returning students gathered to welcome the start of a new academic year. Before long, the the freshmen arrived, signaling the commencement of this year's sorting ceremony. Chapter 104. Professor McGonagall placed the sorting hat on the stool in front of the new students, just as she had in previous years. The new students watched anxiously as the sorting hat began to sing a new song. It seemed the hat spent its off-season composing, though it was clear that the founders had neglected to endow it with any sense of artistry. The song was so lackluster that it made everyone eager to move on to the sorting itself. This year's batch of freshmen lacked a standout star like Harry Potter from the previous year. It wasn't until Professor McGonagall called Luna Lovegood that Ethan's attention was piqued. Luna sprang up to the chair and picked up the sorting hat. However, she didn't put it on right away. Instead, she examined the hat with curiosity, even pulling out a needle from her pocket in an attempt to mend it. "Oh my God, the founders above! Someone come and save me!" The sorting hat cried out in embarrassment. Ethan couldn't help but laugh out loud at the scene. The commotion only ceased when Professor McGonagall sternly intervened. Then, the sorting hat, eager to be done with the ordeal, loudly declared, "Ravenclaw!" The Ravenclaw students clapped, though their applause was tepid. It seemed even the typically unconventional Ravenclaws found Luna a bit too eccentric. However, when Ethan led a round of enthusiastic applause, the others joined in more heartily. The next highlight was Ginny Weasley's sorting. The Gryffindor table erupted in cheers as she was sorted into their house, though Ginny herself seemed less than thrilled, preoccupied with thoughts of Harry Potter and her brother Ron. At this moment, Snape's seat at the staff table was notably empty, hinting at his intent to intercept Harry and his friends. Snape, with his unique connection to Harry, was often the first to notice anything amiss with the boy who lived, outpacing even Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall in this regard. Despite his daily sneers and apparent disdain for Harry, Snape was, in truth, deeply concerned for his safety. His harsh demeanor, a facade necessitated by his role as a double agent. Snape and Dumbledore had been convinced of Voldemort's eventual return even before the Philosopher's Stone incident the previous year. As the sorting ceremony concluded, the banquet began. It was then that Professor Snape made his entrance, gliding into the hall like a large bat and whispering something to Dumbledore and McGonagall. Dumbledore's frown prompted him to leave his seat, taking the two heads of houses with him. From the Gryffindor table, Ethan and Hermione exchanged glances, with Ethan giving her an okay sign, reassuring her that Harry and Ron had finally arrived at school. Hermione's only concern now was for Gryffindor's house points, a worry that proved unfounded since the incident occurred before the school term officially started, sparing Gryffindor any deductions. The next morning, Hermione, who had risen early to review her textbooks as usual, found Harry and Ron being hailed as heroes by their fellow Gryffindors, much to their delight. At breakfast, Hermione vented her frustrations to Ethan. "They're still celebrating, acting as if it was some grand achievement," she said indignantly. "At this rate, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually get expelled." "Okay, don't be angry," Ethan replied, offering Hermione a piece of strawberry pudding. Hermione shot him a glare, but then accepted the gesture and ate it, her mood visibly softened. Unaware of the surprised glances from her classmates, Hermione's familiarity with Ethan had grown over the summer vacation, making their interactions seamless. Noticing Hermione's softened mood, Ethan commented, "Gryffindor tends to act impulsively without grasping the gravity of their actions. So, this is wrong. They should deeply reflect on their actions," Hermione exclaimed, her expression mirroring Professor McGonagall's so closely that Ethan couldn't help but think about the nickname Little McGonagall that many students had given her. He wondered if anyone would ever refer to Professor McGonagall as Big Hermione. Just as Hermione expressed her indignation, a loud reprimand echoed from the Gryffindor table, chastising a student for stealing a car and nearly costing his and Harry's lives, highlighting the shame and potential consequences faced by the student's family. This incident became the talk of the school for the next week. The morning classes were a breeze for Ethan, a student of exceptional talent. Whether it was successfully transforming beetles into buttons in Transfiguration or repotting mandrakes in herbology, Ethan excelled, earning extra points for Ravenclaw. His exemplary performance continued into the afternoon's Defense Against the Dark Arts class, taught by the celebrity author Gilderoy Lockhart. Lockhart, eager to flaunt his achievements, decided to quiz the class on trivial facts about himself, which seemed more suited for a fan club application than an educational assessment. The quiz included questions about his favorite color, secret ambitions, and ideal birthday gifts, culminating in a total of 54 questions. After the quiz, Lockhart reviewed the answers in front of the class, expressing disappointment that few knew his favorite color was lilac, or that he desired harmony between magical and non-magical people, though he wouldn't refuse a bottle of Ogden's Fire Whiskey. To his surprise, he found a set of perfect answers from Ethan, awarding him full marks and 10 points to Ravenclaw, much to Hermione's astonishment. Ethan, with his ability to recall any book he had read, found it easy to ace Lockhart's quiz. He acknowledged Lockhart's praise with a reserved nod, appreciating the extra points, but remaining modest about his achievement. To maintain his perfect grades, and more importantly, to feign friendliness towards Lockhart, Ethan aimed to trick him into signing an autograph. Throughout the previous year, Ethan had been eyeing the restricted section of Hogwarts. Access to this area required a professor's signed permission, a rarity given the need for a gullible enough teacher. Lockhart, with his easily duped nature, seemed like Ethan's best bet for multiple trips to the restricted area this school year. However, Lockhart's antics in the classroom didn't end with the test. To Ethan's dismay, Lockhart wheeled in a massive cage covered with a black cloth. The thick scent of sulfur emanating from behind the cage was a bad sign. What was Lockhart thinking, bringing such a thing into the classroom? Chapter 105. Now, beware. My mission is to teach you to defend yourselves against the most evil forces the wizarding world has ever known, Lockhart announced, grabbing a black cloth with dramatic flair. In this classroom, you will face the most terrifying creatures. But fear not, for as long as I am here, you shall be safe. All I ask is that you remain calm. I must ask you not to scream, Lockhart whispered, as it will only anger them. The students watched, captivated by Lockhart's performance. Beyond his striking appearance, Lockhart's acting skills were surprisingly convincing. His voice brimmed with emotion, his eyes and facial expressions were spot on, and his body language suggested that of a seasoned actor. Ethan couldn't help but reflect on how the path to greatness in this world was so narrow, leading many wizards astray. In a different universe, someone like Lockhart could have been a celebrated bard, achieving greatness on his own merits, rather than resorting to deceit. The class held its breath as Lockhart dramatically unveiled the 747 black cloth. As it was lifted, a collective gasp filled the room, and the atmosphere tensed. Beneath the cloth was a towering iron cage, housing a group of humanoid creatures with bat wings, skin in shades of brown-red and brown-green, and elongated ears. Is this a Cornish pixie? Some students familiar with magical creatures whispered. Most of the class seemed underwhelmed, but Ethan's expression darkened. These were not Cornish pixies. Their coloration was all wrong. Cornish pixies were iron blue, not brown or green. Moreover, these creatures had scorpion-like tails, and their legs were structured more like a lizard's than a humanoid's. These were no pixies. Lockhart continued, "Don't be so sure. They might be cunning little destroyers, akin to devils." What did he mean by might? These were indeed devils, not of this world, but from the lower planes, malicious beings capable of killing humans. They possessed sharp teeth, claws, and highly poisonous tails. They could also transform into various small animals, serving the powerful devils of purgatory as waiters and scouts. These creatures were clearly not native to the Harry Potter universe, likely visitors from another realm. Ethan was puzzled by the transformation of the harmless Cornish pixies Lockhart was supposed to have into these dangerous beings. Unbeknownst to him, the cause was his own actions. The previous summer, the supplier meant to provide Lockhart with pixies was arrested while hunting a chimera, thanks to Ethan's intervention. The intended pixies had been released by the smugglers, only to flee in terror from Ciri. Lockhart, left with no other choice, had risked using a spell he believed would summon pixies from a notebook of an old wizard he had impersonated. Unfortunately, the spell was not for summoning pixies, but for calling forth devils. The students, still processing the sight before them, paid little attention to these details. Lockhart's inadequate explanation only further solidified their skepticism. Meanwhile, the cunning little devils in the cage recognized the truth of their situation. Each one. All pretended to be harmless elves, Lockhart announced loudly. Let's see how you deal with them. With that, he opened the cage door. The last restraints were removed, and the pixies immediately revealed their true nature. The young wizards had imagined they would be facing mere troublemakers, capable at worst of tearing a few books, pulling down curtains, or scratching faces. However, they were met with a far more gruesome reality. Several pixies bared their fangs and claws, attacking the students and causing injuries that left them bleeding profusely. Others brandished the stingers on their tails, delivering painful pricks that swelled into large bumps. Some even transformed into spiders, mice, and even wild boars on the spot, wreaking havoc in the classroom. The students screamed and scattered in every direction. Professor Lockhart, the orchestrator of the chaos, didn't fare any better. As their captor, the pixies harbored a particular hatred for him. The moment the cage door was opened, a pixie lunged at him, poisoning him with a sting. Lockhart attempted to retaliate, but was overwhelmed. The pixies could fly and quickly snatched his wand, tossing it out of the window. Several of them then grabbed Lockhart by his limbs and forced him into the cage, slamming the door shut with a definitive click. Lockhart was now trapped inside the cage. Ethan had always known Lockhart was incompetent, but he hadn't expected him to be overpowered so easily. Surely, an adult wizard should know a few basic spells, including the levitation charm, to handle such creatures. However, it was Lockhart's own fault for underestimating the pixies, who were as powerful as level 2 wizards. Many of the students in the classroom were unable to defend themselves against the onslaught. The sudden attack caught them off guard, and the pixies' destructive capabilities only added to the chaos. The situation looked dire, and Ethan realized he had to intervene. Upon seeing a student bloodied from the pixies' bites, Ethan waved his wand and commanded, "Anti-evil magic circle." Instantly, the injured student was enveloped in a white glow, causing the attacking pixies to recoil as if they had bitten into a hot iron, wailing in pain. Pixies, being creatures of the evil realm, were highly susceptible to anti-evil spells. Ethan then launched a series of ice arrows at the attacking pixies. These creatures, accustomed to the flames and toxins of their home realm, were vulnerable to ice and lightning. The ice arrows hit their mark, freezing the pixies into solid blocks of ice. For the mice and spider terrorizing another student, Ethan cast animal immobilization. Utilizing his druidic powers, he immobilized the transformed pixies, allowing the student to smash them with a textbook titled Walking with Trolls. Ethan's counterattack inspired the other students. Calming down, they began to fight back. Hermione, utilizing the skills she had honed over the summer, cast disarming spells with precision, successfully repelling the pixies with each attempt. Harry recited a stunning spell and immediately took down one of the attackers. Ron, however, found himself in a more precarious situation. His wand had been snapped in two during a car accident the previous night. Now, he was desperately trying to make do, attempting to cast spells with the broken pieces. He aimed to emulate Harry's success, but his efforts culminated in a massive explosion, nearly costing him and the impish attacker their lives. As more students rallied to their defense, Ethan realized it was the opportune moment to act. He decisively cast the anti-evil barrier, an advanced version of the anti-evil magic circle. This spell conjured a barrier that repelled and harmed creatures aligned with evil. Ethan's anti-evil barrier functioned like an immense net, gradually constricting the space available to the malevolent entities. Eventually, when the remaining attackers were cornered, Ethan employed the expulsion technique, a 5-ring protection system designed to forcibly return creatures to their original plane of existence. With the fabric of space visibly distorting, the majority of the attackers were banished back to the infernal plane. A few cunning ones managed to escape by breaking windows, but they were beyond anyone's control at that point. In the aftermath of the expulsion, Ethan was the first to step forward, establishing himself as the primary force in the confrontation. His leadership was not only recognized by his fellow Ravenclaw students, thanks to his previous semester's achievements, but now even the Gryffindors were prepared to follow his lead. Under Ethan's direction, several severely injured young wizards were quickly transported to the school's medical office by their peers, while those with minor injuries were advised to seek treatment on their own. The classroom was left in chaos, with broken furniture, torn books, and the remains of the defeated attackers strewn about. The cleanup was daunting. "What about Lockhart?" Hermione inquired, gesturing towards where Lockhart was confined in a cage, unconscious throughout the entire ordeal. "Leave him there to reflect," Ethan replied with a hint of iciness in his voice. "He must face the consequences for instigating such a grave incident." Chapter 106. After the incident involving Harry and Ron driving to school became widely known, the mishap in the Defense Against the Dark Arts class quickly eclipsed it in popularity, dominating Hogwarts' hot topics for a week. Harry and Ron breathed a sigh of relief, as aside from Malfoy's group, everyone shifted their focus from Mrs. Weasley's scolding letter to making jokes about Lockhart. However, Lockhart's success as a star writer wasn't solely due to his appropriation of others' experiences. His remarkably thick skin, reminiscent of celebrities in later generations, played a significant role. If someone else had faced such an embarrassing situation, they might have felt compelled to leave the school, setting a record for the shortest tenure as a Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. But Lockhart was unfazed. The day after the incident, he carried on as if nothing had happened, displaying a level of shamelessness that left many students bewildered. Some even began to doubt their own memories, wondering if it was indeed Lockhart who had boasted about his prowess that day. Despite this, the incident wasn't without consequences for Lockhart. He decided to avoid practical lessons altogether, shifting the class format to reading and reenactments. Students were invited to perform dramatic passages from his books on stage. While the content of Lockhart's books, based on real experiences, did offer some genuine insights into subduing dark creatures, this approach to teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts was hardly effective. It left students wondering why Lockhart didn't pursue a career in acting instead. Ethan, in particular, felt that if the wizarding world were exposed to Muggle movies and TV shows, Lockhart might have found success in a different field. Harry, however, bore the brunt of Lockhart's new teaching method. Perhaps seeking to boost his popularity or to gather material for his planned book, My Teaching Life at Hogwarts, Lockhart frequently cast Harry and Ethan in his classroom dramas. Harry found this deeply uncomfortable, especially since he lacked Ethan's knack for avoiding the spotlight. Ethan, with his exceptional transformation skills, managed to focus on creating lifelike props, sparing himself from performing. Harry, on the other hand, was often cast as various monsters, repeatedly defeated by Lockhart in front of their classmates. Despite the initial skepticism, the students found these drama classes surprisingly engaging, thanks to the realistic props crafted by Ethan and Lockhart's compelling scripts. For a time, Lockhart's reputation at Hogwarts even improved. However, it wasn't long before the students realized that Lockhart was not the adept dark creature hunter he claimed to be. One afternoon, as Ethan and Hermione were on their way to the Charms classroom, they noticed a crowd of students gathered in the corridor, all peering into the classroom without entering. Curious, they approached and saw Professor Flitwick in conversation with a very old wizard. It was Newt Scamander. Ethan recognized him immediately. Resh, a realization that hinted at an exciting development. Dumbledore's presence only added to the intrigue, suggesting that something significant was about to unfold at Hogwarts. Ethan was introduced to Sir Merlin at the award ceremony, where his paper submitted to the Magical Yearbook of Magical Beasts was highly praised. It seemed likely that Newt Scamander's visit was related to this paper. Professor Flitwick spoke to him with great respect, acknowledging not only his achievements in the study of magical creatures, but also honoring Newt Scamander's venerable age. Scamander, a contemporary of Dumbledore, had been a Hufflepuff student at Hogwarts, with the young Dumbledore as his transfiguration professor. Following an unfortunate incident, Newt had to leave school, embarking on a solitary journey to study magical creatures. His contributions were significant, having fought alongside the headmaster against the first generation of the Dark Lord. Now, nearing a century old, Newt spotted Ethan at the door and greeted him with enthusiasm. "Hello, Mr. Scamander. What brings you here?" Ethan asked respectfully, eager to show his admiration for the scholarly elder. "Your paper, of course," the old man chuckled. Ethan was puzzled, not expecting such a personal visit for a publication matter. "That's only part of the reason. My visit is both professional and personal," Scamander clarified. He began with the personal, sharing his lifelong dream of studying chimeras, creatures of immense power and rarity. His envy of Ethan's success in researching a chimera was palpable. "So, could you allow me, an old man, to see the fruits of your research firsthand? I'm ready to accompany you whenever it's convenient," Scamander requested. Ethan smiled, revealing an exquisite dragon skin wallet, a product of his own making after mastering the space expansion spell. He always carried important research materials with him, including a complete chimera skin. The skin, a patchwork of lion, sheep, and dragon, was a testament to Ethan's remarkable achievement. Scamander's excitement was evident as he examined the chimera skin, a sentiment shared by the students who had gathered around. Hermione quickly pointed out that Ethan had slain the chimera himself, earning a first-class medal for his bravery. The news of the chimera's defeat had spread during the summer, but few could believe that a first-year student was behind the feat. The physical evidence of the chimera skin, along with endorsements from Professor Flitwick and Newt Scamander, left no room for doubt, earning Ethan a round of applause from the assembled crowd. What was intended to be a charms lesson transformed into an impromptu lecture on magical creatures, with Ethan presenting not only the chimera skin, but also a variety of specimens. This unexpected turn of events highlighted Ethan's unique contributions to the study of magical beasts, captivating his peers and professors alike. As the chimera's muscles, nerves, and organs, along with research reports from his own experiments, were laid out, many young wizards had already caught wind of the event and crowded the classroom. Scamander, seizing the opportunity for an impromptu lesson, read the experimental report aloud, much to the amusement of those gathered. He showcased the corresponding specimens, lauding Ethan's experiments and analyses, effectively turning the session into a captivating lesson on magical zoology. This unexpected turn of events left Professor Flitwick utterly astonished. What Scamander found most commendable in Ethan's experimental report were his bold yet logical conjectures and the rigorous methods of experimental demonstration he employed. The report was replete with strictly controlled variable comparisons, a practice not commonly observed among wizards and scholars. Scamander couldn't help but express his admiration. If all wizards could approach their studies as you do, the magical world would advance at a much quicker pace than it currently does. Ethan couldn't help but agree silently. After all, he had applied Muggle standards of biology and chemistry experimentation to his work, a methodology he was keen on introducing to the wizarding world. Update 5.4 Additional update toward 4. Publishing new books is no small feat. I kindly request a wave of custom orders, along with monthly reviews and rewards. If you have tickets, please consider supporting me, the author. Your support is incredibly important to me. Chapter 107. Scamander returned the experimental report to the boy and said, "Okay, now that my personal request has been fulfilled, let's get down to business." He then proceeded to hand Ethan a certificate with a gold edge. It was inscribed in gilt letters, Discovery Award of the Year. Ethan was taken aback before accepting the certificate. This was his first academic award. In his previous life, he had studied engineering and had not delved into scientific research, making this experience almost entirely new to him. "They originally wanted to give you the Rookie of the Year award, but I intervened," Scamander said with a smile. "I believe that your paper, both in terms of the discovery itself and your innovative experimental methods, holds significant importance for the field of magical zoology. I doubt anyone will surpass your contributions in the next few decades. Thus, comparing you to other newcomers seemed unjust. For that reason, I took the liberty of nominating you for the Discovery of the Year award, which is also the highest accolade of the year in the Annual of Magical Beasts." Upon hearing Scamander's detailed explanation, the young wizards around were astounded. They wondered how, at their age, Ethan was the only one achieving such remarkable feats. While they were still grappling with textbook content, Ethan was already pioneering research and innovation. Not only did he manage to publish his findings in the discipline's top journals, but his work was also distinguished enough to be considered for prestigious awards. His achievements were so extraordinary that they transcended the newcomer category, placing him in direct competition with seasoned scholars, and he emerged victorious with overwhelming superiority. This was indeed a legendary journey. Few could criticize Ethan's accomplishments now. The gap between him and his peers was so vast that all envy and jealousy had dissipated, leaving no room for bitterness. However, Ethan's reaction upon receiving the certificate was not one of excitement. Given his current research on arcane magic, any single discovery of his could revolutionize the theoretical foundations of the entire magical world. In his view, the magical community was not even qualified to bestow an award upon him. Any award should bear his name. Thus, to him, the annual Discovery Award seemed trivial. Rather than feeling honored, Ethan's initial thought was whether this was some kind of joke. He did not expect an award as prestigious as the Order of Merlin, but he did anticipate a certain level of formality, not something that felt as casual as handing out pennants. Upon reflection, however, Ethan realized the rationale behind it. The Annual of Magical Beasts is considered the pinnacle of academic journals in magical zoology, akin to Nature or Science in the non-magical world. Yet these prestigious publications also adopt a casual approach to some of their annual awards. Although the Annual of Magical Beasts may not wield as much influence, given that magical beasts are not deemed as crucial as basic charms and transfiguration in the magical world, it remains the leading journal in its field. One significant challenge for magical research, as opposed to its Muggle counterpart, is the smaller wizarding population. This directly impacts the number of researchers in the magical community, making a top journal in a field with a limited audience a unique phenomenon. Professor Flitwick quietly explained to Ethan, "The magical yearbook of fantastic beasts is not like the Daily Prophet. If you don't have the spare money for some fancy stuff, the bonus is only a symbolic 200 galleons. However, this award is recognized by the entire magical world." It suddenly became clear to Ethan. He understood the prestige similar to that of being published in Transfiguration today. The reason scholars strive to publish in academic journals, such as the Annals of Magical Beasts, is largely due to their recognized authority within the wizarding world. Having a paper in Transfiguration Ode means that whether it's the Ministry of Magic or Ilvermorny School in the United States, even if the person in charge doesn't know you personally, showing them the journal would immediately establish your identity as a Transfiguration scholar, facilitating communication and employment opportunities. For wizards like Ethan, who won the annual Discovery Award from the Magical Beasts annual magazine, they would be treated as honored guests by local ministries of magic and academies wherever they go. This is how one builds influence, step by step. Ethan even began to ponder whether he should produce more research results, submit articles to various academic journals, and accumulate influence before breaking through to legendary status and gaining the ability to protect himself. "Now, let's take a picture," Scamander said, taking out a camera and handing it to Professor Flitwick. "The next issue of the Magical Beasts Yearbook will feature your paper and the award you've won." At that moment, a familiar greasy voice was heard from a distance. "What's going on here? Why are there so many people?" Gilderoy Lockhart was seen making his way through the crowd towards them. Driven by professional curiosity, he always found his way to where the crowds gathered, seeking to stand out and capitalize on the moment. Upon seeing Flitwick about to take a photo of Ethan and Scamander in a formal suit, Lockhart, misunderstanding the situation and noticing the camera, excitedly inquired, "Which newspaper are you from? Who are you interviewing? Why wasn't I informed of an interview today?" As he spoke, he approached Ethan, the obvious center of attention, and clapped him on the shoulders, exclaiming loudly and cheerfully, "We meet again, Ethan, after being interviewed by reporters. How was the interview? Seeing my photos in the newspaper makes you feel jealous, right? So you couldn't wait to make news. Come on, Mr. Reporter. Lockhart said, turning to Scamander with a smile. "You're lucky I happen to be here. If it can make headlines, I might even consider letting you take a couple's photo." "Sorry, who are you?" Scamander asked, puzzled. He usually lived in seclusion and had only come out because of Ethan's excellent paper. "Sorry, you don't know me? I am Gilderoy Lockhart, an Order of Merlin, 3rd class, an honorary member of the Defense League against the Dark Arts, and a 5-time winner of the Wizarding Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award." Scamander, unimpressed, had seen many people with 3rd-level medals. "Who are you?" he repeated, showing little interest. Lockhart, undeterred, turned to Ethan, noticed the certificate in his hand, and read, "About the anatomical analysis of chimeras. I am very familiar with this magical creature. In fact, in my countless experiences of eradicating dark creatures, there was a time when I killed a chimera, but I haven't had time to write it into a book." "So, you're the 2nd wizard in history to kill a chimera?" Scamander asked, suddenly intrigued. "Wizards. History." Lockhart faltered, realizing he didn't actually know what a chimera was. As soon as he heard the claim, he knew this was no ordinary individual. When boasting about his exploits, he carefully chose his targets: female ghosts, ghouls, and snowmen, entities whose defeat wouldn't seem too far-fetched or easily disprovable. The idea that vanquishing such creatures could be considered a historic feat was beyond his imagination. He believed that boasting about achievements beyond his capabilities was a sure path to exposure. This cautious approach to self-promotion was a principle he had honed over years of deceit and was the key reason he had managed to avoid detection for so long. Realizing the potential for overstepping, he decided to feign ignorance to the other party's statement, and then inquired, "Which publication are they from?" "Magical Beasts Annual Magazine," was the reply. "Fantastic Beasts Almanac? I've never heard of it. It must be a minor publication," he responded, regaining his calm posture. He was relieved it wasn't a well-known newspaper, thinking a display of slight apprehension wouldn't tarnish his reputation too much. If anything were reported, he could dismiss it as sensationalism by a tabloid seeking fame. However, his words caused a stir among the young wizards. It was shocking that even an ordinary wizard, let alone one of Lockhart's supposed caliber who dealt with dark creatures daily, was unaware of the Fantastic Beasts Annual. Almost incredulously, Ethan asked, "Then, do you know about CNKI?" Lockhart sensed he might have made a grave and foolish error. Disregarding the specifics of the conversation, he quickly concocted an excuse and made his escape. "Where did Professor Dumbledore find such a character?" Scamander mused aloud, his voice carrying to the young wizards. "He belongs in a circus, not at Hogwarts." Lockhart's reputation, which had briefly improved, began to decline once again. Chapter 108. The Fad of Fantastic Beasts. Trends at Hogwarts change as swiftly as the wind. Within just a few days, the Fantastic Beasts Annual, a niche academic magazine, had become the latest craze among the young wizards at Hogwarts. Strolling through the campus, one could spot a wizard clutching a copy of the magazine at nearly every turn. Students eagerly devoured the articles, particularly Ethan's anatomical analysis of the chimera and the formation mechanism of its dark magic power. Despite not fully grasping the content, they would casually drop complex terms like pericardiophrenetic artery and atrial isovolume, magical systole, in conversations, as if to showcase their understanding. During lunch at the Gryffindor table, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were together when Harry noticed Hermione poring over a copy of the Magical Yearbook of Magical Beasts, which she had spread out on an empty plate. Even after finishing her meal, she continued to study the magazine, occasionally jotting down notes. "Come on, Hermione, can't you put that magazine away for a second?" Ron complained, baffled by her fascination. "What's so interesting about that kind of book anyway?" "It's because everyone is reading the annual magazine of magical beasts now. If you read Ethan's paper, you'd realize how limited our previous understanding of magical creatures was," Hermione sharply retorted. "Even Mr. Scamander has praised this paper, especially the experimental methods used. There are many innovative approaches that you won't find in textbooks." "Since you study with Ethan every day, hasn't he shared any secrets with you?" Harry asked, puzzled. "Ethan isn't like that," Hermione defended earnestly, her brow furrowed. "Some of the theories are just too advanced for me at the moment, Understanding them and seeing through them are entirely different matters. I was involved in many of the experiments during the writing of this article, but that doesn't mean I could have written it myself. So, you're saying you contributed to the article? Ron asked, his tone tinged with jealousy, though it was unclear whom his remark was directed at. If it were me, I'd definitely praise that article too, Harry teased, nudging Ron. What's wrong with that? Am I wrong? Ron responded, clearly annoyed. That's not the point. I recommend this article purely on its academic merits, not because I had a part in it. Hermione glared at him, making Ron feel as if he were under the stern gaze of Professor McGonagall. Mr. Weasley, if I were you, I'd focus on writing articles of that caliber instead of making snide remarks, Hermione huffed, before turning her attention back to her notes in the magazine. Harry, sensing another argument brewing, a common occurrence since the start of the school year, quickly changed the subject. Hermione, what are you writing there? Ron, unable to contain his curiosity, peered over and exclaimed in surprise, Why did you draw a heart around Ethan's name? I saw Parvati Patil do the same thing with Lockhart's picture. Caught off guard, Hermione snapped the magazine shut, her cheeks flushing with anger. That's none of your business, she declared, hastily gathering her books. Goodbye, I'm off to the library. With a final glare at Ron, she stormed off. Once Hermione was out of earshot, Harry whispered to Ron, You really shouldn't have asked her that. It was a bit insensitive. I was just curious. Why is she so touchy? Parvati acted the same way, Ron mumbled, still not understanding the gravity of his mistake. Have you ever upset Parvati before? Harry asked, somewhat exasperated. It was just a question. Don't you think there's something odd about Hermione, Parvati, and the others? Or are all girls this sensitive? Ron pondered, oblivious to his faux pas. He then turned to Harry, offering unsolicited advice. See, this is why it's better to hang out like we do. We have fun and never get into these kinds of arguments. Harry could only sigh in response. If it were in the past, Ethan wouldn't have thought there was a problem with Ron, but recently he had developed a fondness for a girl named Zhang Chu. Consequently, he began to empathize with certain feelings. Seeing that Harry remained silent, Ron said, Forget it. If you're angry, then be angry. She won't copy her homework for us anyway. Harry was left speechless. Do you hear yourself? Have you forgotten how we passed our first-year exams? He shook his head and eventually pulled out a copy of the Magical Animal Almanac from his bag. No, Harry, you too read this magazine? Ron felt momentarily betrayed. But Harry, oblivious to Ron's reaction, said, I've just realized that I'm quite interested in magical creatures. The reason, of course, was not as simple as Harry had stated. That morning, he had seen Zhang Chu holding a copy of the magical yearbook of Fantastic Beasts, asking Ethan for his autograph and posing questions. It was the kind of attention Harry had always dreamed of receiving. It seemed Zhang Chu also liked the magazine. If he could understand it, he would have topics to discuss with Zhang Chu in the future. Therefore, he borrowed it from George and Fred. However, when he turned to Ethan's article with its lengthy title, he was embarrassed to find that he couldn't understand it at all. This was a problem most young wizards, including Zhang Chu, faced. There was a significant gap between them and Ethan. Only certain senior students could appreciate the brilliance of this paper. For instance, Ravenclaw's prefect Penello had more than once slapped her thigh in envy, wishing she had been as bold as Ethan. Why wasn't I as shameless as you back then? She lamented, leaning on Seeley's shoulder and pretending to cry. If only I could shamelessly eat young grass like an old cow. Then she turned around and was playfully spanked by Siri. Since he couldn't understand it, the Annals of Fantastic Beasts trend quickly passed for Harry. He no longer had to worry about not having common topics with the girl of his dreams. Soon, he got the opportunity to interact with her. This year's Quidditch season was approaching. Since last year's match, Ravenclaw's fighting spirit had been ignited by Ethan, determined to defend the Academy Cup and Quidditch Cup under Ethan's leadership. Siri was particularly invested in this cause. She urged Roger to apply early for permission to use the Quidditch training ground. Your method is really great, Ethan. On the way to the stadium, Roger was both happy and perplexed. As you said, a few compliments were all it took for Professor Gilderoy Lockhart to gladly donate his signature, no matter the purpose. I don't understand why my mother is obsessed with this kind of guy. Ethan was also very pleased with this outcome. In Ravenclaw, Roger was known for being talkative. After this news spread, many young wizards would surely flock to Lockhart for his autograph. This year, the Forbidden Book area was expected to see many visitors, and with Lockhart's signature, Ethan anticipated no surprises when he visited. Lost in thought, he approached the Quidditch pitch and saw from a distance 2 groups of people confronting each other in the middle of the stadium. Chapter 109, The Confrontation. The Quidditch players of Gryffindor and Slytherin were in a standoff. "What's with the weather today? Even Ravenclaw is here," sneered Marcus Flint, Slytherin's Quidditch captain. "It's our training time. We woke up very early. Please leave." Oliver Wood, Gryffindor's Quidditch captain, roared back. Marcus Flint, towering over Wood, replied with a troll-like cunning, "This pitch is quite spacious, Wood." At that moment, Gryffindor's female team members, Alicia, Angelina, and Katie, arrived, drawn by the commotion. The Slytherin team, notably lacking any female players, stood in a line, their expressions mirroring Flint's disdainful look towards the Gryffindor team. "But I've reserved the stadium," Wood stated firmly. "I've reserved it." Flint retorted, "Oh, but I have a special note signed by Professor Snape granting the Slytherin team permission to use the Quidditch pitch today to train our new seeker." Ethan observed the noisy confrontation with interest, especially noting the captains' names, Wood and Flint, which amusingly reflected their clashing nature. "What a coincidence. We also have permission signed by Professor Gilderoy Lockhart." Roger chimed in, then curiously asked, "Wait, you have a new seeker? Who is it?" A smaller boy emerged from behind the taller players, a proud smile on his pale, pointed face. It was Draco Malfoy. However, what caught Ethan's attention were the broomsticks in their hands. 7 brand-new, sleek, and shiny Nimbus 2001 broomsticks gleamed in the morning sun, their gold lettering dazzling. "The latest model, just released last month," Flint mentioned casually, brushing off a speck of dust from his broom. "I believe it's much faster than Harry and Ethan's Nimbus 2000 series." He then disdainfully glanced at the 2 teams' older brooms. The Weasley twins even had the older sweeping 5 stars. "These brooms are only good for sweeping the floor," he scoffed. A hush fell over the training ground. Ethan and Shirley exchanged looks, both showcasing their Nimbus 2001 brooms. Wood's face paled, realizing their rivals had upgraded to the latest broomsticks. "The rich really can outspend us," he thought, dismayed. Malfoy locked eyes with Harry, his gaze intense. He had always sought to bridge the gap between them, despite their house rivalry. On the Quidditch field, he saw an opportunity to openly compete with Harry, dreaming of a camaraderie born out of mutual respect and physical exertion. This desire for friendship had been thwarted by Malfoy's clumsy attempts and the animosity from Ron Weasley. Yet, in Malfoy's heart, he believed he and Harry were alike and destined to be friends. As Malfoy was lost in thought, Ron and Hermione arrived to watch the Quidditch practice. Hermione, having been coached by Ethan, had grown to appreciate the sport. "What's going on? Why aren't you playing?" Ron asked Harry, puzzled by the presence of 3 teams. "I'm Slytherin's new seeker," Malfoy boasted, hoping to impress. "Everyone was just admiring the brooms my father bought for our team." He then turned to Ron with a malicious grin. "So what brings you here, Weasley? This is Quidditch territory, after all. You are welcome here." "Listen, Weasley, there's going to be a Quidditch match at Hogwarts, and Harry and I will be attending. But guess who doesn't get an invite?" Ron's face flushed with anger at his words. He had always dreamed of playing Quidditch with Harry, chasing each other across the sky, engaging in a game that allowed for simple yet exhilarating physical contact and communication. Unfortunately, lacking both talent and financial resources, Ron couldn't make this dream a reality. In the past, this would have been impossible, but now, to Ron's dismay, Malfoy had become a Quidditch player. The thought of Malfoy freely chasing Harry across the field, engaging in the same kind of physical play until they were both drenched in sweat, filled Ron with a deep-seated anger. Malfoy's smug expression was unbearable, especially to Hermione. "At least no one and Gryffindor has to pay to be on the team. Hermione retorted sharply. "They get in purely on merit." Her words struck a nerve, and Malfoy's face turned a shade of red as he snapped. "No one asked you, you stinking little mudblood." However, as soon as the words left his mouth, Malfoy realized his mistake. Rumors had been circulating about the close relationship between the so-called mudblood and a certain Ravenclaw student. Despite also being a Muggle-born, this Ravenclaw was someone Malfoy knew he couldn't afford to offend. Regret washed over him, but it was too late. His insult acted like a spark in a powder keg. Flint rushed to Malfoy's side, trying to shield him from the backlash. Alia screamed in outrage, "How dare you!" Even Ron, who often bickered with Hermione, instinctively drew his wand. Zhang-Chu watched Ethan anxiously, fearing he might retaliate. She had been observing Ethan, intrigued by his relationship with Hermione, and his recent heroic feat of killing a chimera single-handedly, a feat unmatched in wizarding history. If Ethan decided to use his formidable skills against Malfoy, the outcome would be dire. Zhang-Chu hoped Ethan, being Muggle-born, might not understand the full weight of Malfoy's slur. However, Ethan's serious expression and focused gaze on Malfoy indicated he understood all too well. Yet he remained still, arms crossed, choosing not to act. Zhang-Chu was puzzled by his restraint, but soon realized Ethan saw no need to intervene because Hermione was ready to take action herself. Expelliarmus! Before anyone could react, a red light shot past Flint, striking Malfoy directly. His wand and Nimbus 2001 were sent flying, and he stumbled backward. But Hermione wasn't finished. With another wave of her wand, she commanded, "Activated rope." Malfoy's clothes twisted as if alive, binding him tightly. Now weaponless and immobilized, Malfoy could only squirm on the ground, resembling a trapped insect. Seeing their leader in distress, Crabbe and Goyle, Malfoy's loyal but not particularly clever followers, charged forward. Despite their lack of cunning, their size and loyalty to the Malfoy family made them formidable. But Hermione stood her ground, casting grease. A slick pool of oil appeared beneath their feet, sending the two tumbling down in a comical fashion. Hermione fought the urge to escalate the situation further, choosing restraint over retaliation. Ethan activated the activated rope spell twice more to securely bind the two of them. He knew he had to remain composed, otherwise they might have ended up in the school infirmary. Hermione's exceptional performance left everyone around her in awe. In less than 10 seconds, she had single-handedly taken down 3 opponents. Was this the same Hermione they knew? "No wonder you didn't take action," Zhang-Chu said, looking at Ethan with a mix of emotions. He was aware that Hermione's capabilities last semester were nowhere near this level. He had learned from Prefect Pinello that Ethan had spent his summer at Ottery St. Catchpole. He had purchased a house in Boar Village, where Miss Granger had spent her summer vacation with him. Her newfound combat prowess was evidently the result of Ethan's influence. Chapter 110. Seeing his teammates being knocked down, Flint finally couldn't contain his frustration any longer and yelled, "Everyone, come with me. Don't let her get too arrogant." Despite Malfoy's incessant cursing, he was still a fellow student and a member of the same team. If Flint didn't take action while Malfoy was being humiliated, his credibility would be at stake in the future. Moreover, their family had recently donated a batch of Nimbus 2001 broomsticks to the team, and for the sake of these broomsticks, they felt compelled to seek revenge for Malfoy. Adrian Pusey, one of the chasers, asked with a hint of hesitation, "Are you really going to take action? Ethan Green is watching from the sidelines. I've heard he's quite close to that girl." Flint, infuriated by the question, retorted, "There are so many of us. No matter how powerful Ethan Green is, he can't possibly defeat us all before his magic is depleted." Convinced by Flint's argument, the Slytherins collectively pointed their wands at Hermione, escalating the situation significantly. The 3 Malfoys, merely second-year students with a limited grasp of spells, had now rallied a group of 6 or 7 Slytherins, each in their 4th year or higher, vastly more experienced in magic than their younger counterparts. For Hermione, this posed a significant challenge. Under Sheely's watchful eye, Zhang-Chu approached Ethan and inquired, "So, aren't you going to take action now?" Ever since learning about Ethan's feat of defeating a chimera single-handedly, she had been eager to witness his prowess in battle. However, Ethan remained nonchalant, arms crossed, exuding confidence. "It's fine. Hermione can handle it." Indeed, Hermione's response was nothing short of remarkable. Faced with the onslaught of 6 or 7 opponents, she chose not to resist head-on, which would have been the least strategic approach. Instead, she cast a spell, Cloud Magic. Instantly, the area was enveloped in smoke, obscuring her from the Slytherin's view. Without a clear target, they were at a loss. Flint attempted to dispel the magical fog with the Cyclone Curse, but to no avail. By the time the fog finally cleared, Hermione was nowhere to be found. "Where is she?" the Slytherins murmured, bewildered. Ethan's psychic abilities allowed him to sense Hermione's presence. She had rendered herself invisible and was stealthily moving among them. Suddenly, her voice pierced the confusion. "I'm here!" As the Slytherins turned towards the sound, Hermione's figure materialized, and she cast another spell, Glitter Dust. A blinding light erupted, leaving the Slytherins disoriented and temporarily blinded. Taking advantage of their vulnerability, Hermione swiftly subdued each of them, binding them with their own clothes. The number of Slytherins lying defeated on the pitch rose from 3 to 9, each looking at the other in dismay. They had clearly underestimated their opponent. Now, they faced a dilemma, whether to report the incident to Professor Snape. Admitting they were overpowered by a second-year Muggle-born witch, and in a 7-against-1 scenario, was a bitter pill to swallow. Meanwhile, members of Gryffindor and Ravenclaw viewed Hermione in a new light, almost as if she were a Valkyrie. For Ron, in particular, the scene was immensely satisfying. Watching Hermione effortlessly defeat Malfoy and the other senior students was a moment he had longed for. Be yourself. So despite the previous awkwardness with Hermione, Ethan took the initiative to step forward and asked, "Hermione, how did you do that? I mean, why did you suddenly become so powerful?" "That's because Ethan teaches well. I trained with him for a while during the summer," Hermione replied, glancing at Ethan, who was smiling at her gently. "To improve so much in one summer vacation, the training must have been very intense," Ron commented. "It would be great if he was willing to teach me." Hermione wholeheartedly agreed. After witnessing Ethan and Ciri hunting chimeras together, she recognized her own shortcomings. Thus, she dedicated herself to rigorous training, sparring with Ethan for at least 2 hours every day. Initially, the training was excruciating. Even a minor hit would leave her in so much pain she could barely walk. However, as she gained proficiency, she began to improve. Despite Ethan being a much more advanced opponent, Hermione found herself exhausted and drenched in sweat after each session, yet she looked forward to it every day. It was a fulfilling experience that allowed her to grow from an ordinary Muggle girl into a real witch. Thanks to Hermione's newfound strength, the Slytherin team could no longer interfere with Gryffindor's training. As for Ravenclaw, they had no fundamental conflict with Gryffindor. To maintain harmony and save face for Hermione and Ethan, Wood generously shared half of the field with Ravenclaw, allowing both houses to practice together harmoniously. As for the Slytherins, Ethan had them suspended in the audience, watching the practice. They were not let down until late in the evening. This incident didn't escalate, at least not to the professors. Malfoy considered complaining to Snape, but was dissuaded by Flint and others who preferred to keep the matter quiet. They reasoned that it was just a minor quarrel among students, which would be forgotten in a week or two unless it reached the professors, which would officially acknowledge the incident and potentially bring shame to Slytherin. Following this, the Slytherin Quidditch team developed a phobia of Hermione, avoiding her whenever possible. This inadvertently gave the Gryffindor Quidditch players an edge. Ethan's reputation among the younger wizards also grew. Many believed that with his guidance, Hermione was able to take on an entire Quidditch team. Some even speculated that Ethan would make a better defense against the dark arts professor than Lockhart. Despite the praise, Ethan continued his studies under Lockhart. After a defense against the dark arts lesson, Ethan approached Lockhart with a request. "Professor Lockhart," he said, stopping him as he was about to leave the classroom. "I wish to borrow a book from the library to learn more about werewolves. However, it's in the restricted section, so I need a teacher's signature. I believe this book will help me understand the magic spell you discussed in Wandering with Werewolves." "Ah, the werewolf," Lockhart exclaimed, intrigued by Ethan's initiative. Lockhart beamed with enthusiasm. This book is very exciting, isn't it? Indeed, you have a knack for handling chimeras, but when it comes to werewolves, I still hold a bit of confidence. Of course, no one would object to me offering a bit of extra help to the best students in the grade. As he spoke, he produced a large peacock feather quill, swiftly signed his name in a flamboyant cursive without even glancing at the words on the note, and handed the note back to Ethan. However, I must admit that the humanoid restoration spell is quite complex, and I don't always succeed in using it. Ethan wondered if Lockhart's admission was a preemptive excuse to cover his inadequacies. Regardless, Ethan had no intention of calling him out. His entire semester's reading plan in the restricted section was now within reach, thanks to Lockhart's signed note. With a grateful smile, Ethan bid farewell and left, content with his successful encounter. Chapter 111. Ethan obtained the signature and immediately headed to the library. He had no interest in learning about werewolves. In fact, Ethan had long harbored the desire to explore all the books in the restricted section. He had even resolved to take advantage of this semester to read as many books in the restricted area as possible. However, his most pressing task was to find research and discussions on the soul, as he owed the ghost of Helena a crown. He knew that, aside from Professor Lockhart, it was unlikely any other professor would sign the permission slip without scrutiny, and this included the Defense Against the Dark Arts professors in the years to come. Upon entering the library's quiet and somber atmosphere, Ethan approached Mrs. Pintz. "Gilderoy Lockhart?" she asked with a hint of suspicion, examining the note Ethan handed her. She didn't immediately grant access. Instead, she warned, "Most of the books in the restricted area are not suitable for young wizards like you." Faced with Mrs. Pintz's caution, Ethan offered a sincere smile while silently amplifying his charm-human effect. "Actually, Professor Lockhart believes my performance in Defense Against the Dark Arts class surpasses that of the other students. He's offering me some extra guidance, teaching me things beyond the standard curriculum." Ethan cleverly navigated his words, silently hoping Mrs. Pintz was also an admirer of Professor Lockhart. After reconsidering the signature, Mrs. Pintz's expression remained unchanged, but Ethan's psychic ability detected a flicker of happiness in her heart. Clearly, Professor Lockhart held a special place among middle-aged and elderly women. With a click, Mrs. Pintz unlocked the gate to the restricted section, and Ethan stepped inside. The restricted section was filled with short bookshelves, a stark contrast to the towering shelves outside that stretched from floor to ceiling. Although these shelves were only a little over 2 meters tall, the rarity of the books they held was incomparable. Ethan noticed that many books were not merely placed on the shelves, but were bound with chains and hemp ropes. Some had seals engraved with ancient magical texts. Not every book in this area was so perilous as to require sealing, but a detect magic spell revealed that nearly every tome radiated magical energy, underscoring the uniqueness of genuine magical books. Some knowledge contained within these books was so powerful that merely viewing them could corrupt the spirit, leading to madness or transformation into a monster. For such books, neither copying nor scholar's touch spells were effective. One had to read them directly. Ethan browsed the bookshelves, examining each title to find what he needed. Titles like Powerful Potions, Book of Spells, Deadly Curses, True Interpretation of the Jade Record, Great Grimoire, and Secret Garden Rose hinted at the dangerous knowledge contained within. Books like Great Grimoire were especially terrifying, capable of consuming a person's life force with a mere opening. In contrast, books like Powerful Potions and True Interpretation of the Jade Record, which lacked inherent magical power, seemed almost refreshing. These books were restricted because the potion recipes and alchemy formulas they contained were incredibly hazardous, both in their creation and use. Mystical occurrences are common, yet books themselves hold no inherent power to wreak havoc. When Ethan encountered such a book, he promptly used Scholar's Touch to secure it. Roaming the bookshelves for roughly 10 minutes, and with Mrs. Pintz growing nearly impatient, Ethan discovered the book he was searching for. The Book of Seth, allegedly authored by a spiritual entity named Seth, who has achieved reincarnation and resides in an incorporeal realm, this being can freely create its desired surroundings. Despite skepticism about the claims, Ethan could indeed sense a potent spiritual energy emanating from the book. Guided by the notion that the content of a magic book correlates with its inherent power, he chose it. In truth, the most straightforward method to address Horcruxes would be to consult Advanced Black Magic Revealed. It was from this tome that Tom Riddle gleaned the knowledge to create Horcruxes. Regrettably, upon assuming the role of headmaster, Dumbledore promptly relocated Advanced Dark Arts Revealed and several other books he deemed hazardous to his office. Ethan found such actions disagreeable, believing that not even Dumbledore had the authority to dictate which books wizards could or could not access. However, given the circumstances, Ethan had no choice but to seek out research related to the soul. Thus, Ethan approached Mrs. Pintz, the large, thick, brown-covered Book of Seth in his arms. After examining the book, Mrs. Pintz returned it to Ethan, cautioning, "Be careful, Mr. Green. This book is peculiar. Those who have read it find themselves unable to recall its contents. This is not a book meant for students." "Ah, thank you for the warning, Mrs. Pintz. I'll take extra caution," Ethan replied, taking the book and swiftly exiting the library, eager to delve into its contents. Ethan didn't head back to the dormitory or remain in the library, but instead sought out a secluded corner to use mansion technique. In an instant, he was transported to a demiplane, a place of unparalleled safety for him. In the basement of the tower, Ethan brought a rocking chair into the laboratory. Given its purpose, the laboratory's walls, floors, and ceilings boasted higher defense levels than those above, reinforced with defensive spells to mitigate potential mishaps. Upon closer inspection of the Book of Seth, Ethan noticed something akin to a wandering spirit moving across the cover. Ignoring the eerie cover, he opened the book, only to be met with a shrill, blood-curdling scream that seemed to assault his soul directly. It was Banshee's wail! Mental barrier! Ethan quickly realized the danger, channeling his spiritual energy into a barrier to shield his soul. However, this was merely a temporary solution. The Banshee's wail had to be silenced. Silence! The book's outcry ceased abruptly, silenced as if strangled, leaving not even a whisper behind. Now, Ethan could finally read the book in peace. With silent sneak in effect, Banshee's wail posed no further threat. He discovered that the book's opening sections didn't delve into the soul, but rather offered enigmatic insights into divinity, the cosmos, time, and other mysteries, seemingly trivial at first glance. The remainder of the book was filled with fervent, delusional ramblings about demons, hell, and heaven, resembling the diatribes of a religious zealot combined with a psychopath, rather than the coherent thoughts of a sage. Ethan discovered that upon a meticulous examination, the author's exploration of the soul was deeply embedded within the narrative. The concepts of heaven, hell, gods, and devils were not merely fantastical elements, but rather the author's tangible representations of the soul's good and evil inclinations. It seemed as though, in the process of delving into the soul's power, the author, perhaps unknowingly, documented some truly fundamental knowledge. This insight, however, would only be apparent to readers who could interpret the myriad of metaphors. The books mentioned, including the Seth book, are either original works or are based on real-life prototypes. They stand as classic texts within the occult genre. Update 5 Additional update. Introducing new books to the collection is always a challenge. I kindly request a wave of support, be it through custom orders, flowers, monthly tickets, comments, or rewards. If you have tickets, please consider supporting me, the author. Your help is truly significant and greatly appreciated. Chapter 112. After reading the Book of Seth, Ethan sat in the recliner, absorbing the newfound knowledge. He was astounded by the depth of understanding he had gained regarding the soul's nature. It felt akin to the abilities of a warlock from World of Warcraft. The expertise in soul control granted Ethan several spells. Soul Tear, a level 1 necromantic spell that directly damages the soul, rendering it weak. Absorb Soul, a second-level necromancy spell that absorbs the souls of the weak, living, or dead, creating soul fragments necessary for casting other spells. Create Soul Stone, a level 2 necromantic spell that allows the creation of a soul container by inscribing a soul mark on an object with magical adaptability. Soul Link, a 3rd level necromancy spell that shares the damage suffered by the caster with a contracted creature. Soul Fire, a 5th level necromantic spell capable of burning the soul, causing severe damage. If the enemy dies, soul fragments are produced. Soul Ritual, a 7th level necromantic spell that uses soul fragments to construct a soul well, rapidly restoring the vitality and magic power of nearby creatures. These spells covered a broad spectrum of soul research, akin to that of warlocks in World of Warcraft. With these abilities, Ethan could manipulate ethereal souls, becoming a formidable adversary to them. Voldemort's Horcruxes, powerful due to their resistance to ordinary magic, were vulnerable to Ethan's soul-interfering capabilities. He could bypass their magical defenses and directly target the soul within. Moreover, these spells had various applications. For instance, Ethan could imprison an enemy's soul in a soul stone after defeating them, preventing any chance of resurrection. Alternatively, if a friend died irreparably, he could preserve their soul in a soul stone for potential future resurrection. Having just mastered this array of spells, Ethan was eager to test his new abilities. He wondered who would be the fortunate target of his experimentation. Ethan then left the comfort of his recliner, dispelled the mansion spell, and returned to Hogwarts. He made his way to the 8th floor of the castle, arriving in front of the mural with the troll. With practiced ease, he opened the room of requirement, entering the hidden stuff room. The room was cluttered with bottles, cans, tattered textbooks, strange-looking robes, and various oddities. It was amidst these treasures that Ethan had previously made his first significant discovery. As he explored the room of requirement, Ethan ventured into previously unexplored areas, searching for the object of his quest within this vast collection of discarded items. Before long, he stumbled upon an item that matched the description in his memory, a pockmarked stone statue of an old wizard wearing gwength. With a crown of dirty, worn curls and what appeared to be an ancient faded crown atop it, Ethan initially mistook it for a head mold from a hair salon. However, he knew this was his target. As he approached the stone statue, he used his psychic powers to shield his consciousness. Standing before the statue, a hoarse voice echoed, "Are you, a young wizard from Hogwarts?" The voice seemed familiar to Ethan, reminding him of the scream he heard when he had an encounter with Professor Quirrell. "Ah, hello, Voldemort. Should I say long time no see, or is it the first time we meet?" Ethan greeted inwardly, maintaining a naive facade as he asked, "Who are you?" "Do you know the Sorting Hat, child?" the hoarse voice inquired. "Yes, I am a young wizard at Hogwarts, so of course I know the Sorting Hat," Ethan replied knowingly. "Now that you know the Sorting Hat, this will be easier to understand. I am the will within Ravenclaw's diadem, similar to the Sorting Hat," the voice explained. "Really?" Ethan expressed disbelief. "I've heard that wearing the Ravenclaw diadem can grant wisdom comparable to that of Ravenclaw herself, but the diadem has been lost for thousands of years. In fact, the crown was never lost, the ice corrected. I was left here by Ravenclaw, waiting for the arrival of her true heir." "Now that I've found you, I'm destined for you, right?" Ethan said, barely containing his excitement. "Finding the crown is only the first step," the voice instructed earnestly. "You must also pass my test." "What test?" Ethan inquired. "Wear the crown of Ravenclaw and open your heart, just as you did with the Sorting Hat. Then I will know whether you are a true descendant of Ravenclaw." The voice whispered enticingly. "As long as you successfully pass the test, I will impart all the wisdom of Ravenclaw to you." "Marvelous," Ethan exclaimed, eagerly grabbing the crown and placing it atop his head. "Great, kid, that's it," the voice continued, but Ethan halted his action just as the crown was about to settle on his head. "What are you waiting for? Boy, don't you want the wisdom of Ravenclaw?" The voice attempted to entice him further. Ethan simply smiled coldly. "I'm waiting for the skill cooldown. What about you?" Before the voice could react, Ethan's hands, holding the crown, ignited with a pale, transparent flame. The flame, gentle and seemingly temperatureless, danced in Ethan's hands. Yet, as it reached the crown, the flames intensified, eliciting a wail from the crown. "Ah, what kind of flame is this?" the voice screamed. "Well, it still tastes the same," Ethan remarked. satisfied with the crowns, or rather, the remnant soul within the crowns, reaction. This scream was reminiscent of Professor Quirrell's reaction to Harry's touch. In fact, preparing a level 5 spell takes a long time for me. If you hadn't been so eager, Soulfire might not have been able to burn you. It's unfortunate you didn't seize the opportunity when you had the chance. The Horcrux fragments consumed by Soulfire couldn't respond to Ethan's taunt and soon disintegrated into nothingness within the flames. Soul fragments +1. Just one soul fragment? You're too lenient, Ethan complained, looking at the transparent fragment produced by Soulfire. This hardly befits your status as the Dark Lord. Storing away the fragment, Ethan examined the crown. Well, this is a real treasure. Let's see what functions it has. Chapter 113. Ethan did as he said. He used magic to meticulously check the crown to ensure it was free of any negative power or strange will before placing it on his head. This time, he truly wore it. Instantly, he felt a clarity in his mind, but that was the extent of it. Aside from a slight enhancement in intelligence and spellcasting ability, the crown seemed to lack any additional powers. Ethan couldn't help but feel it didn't live up to its prestigious reputation. However, during his examination with the Acacian technique, Ethan discovered something unusual. Ravenclaw's diadem, a legendary object, Ravenclaw's lifelong masterpiece. This intricate silver diadem grants the wearer a +2 enhancement bonus to the intelligence attribute and increases the wearer's spellcasting level by +2. There seems to be some hidden power within this crown. An unknown power? What could that be? Ethan pondered, using the power of his mind to delve deeper. He soon realized that this so-called unknown power was a collection of thoughts and memories. Without sufficient sensitivity in one's spiritual power, detecting it would be nearly impossible. Ethan cautiously connected with the memory using his mental power. Suddenly, a wealth of knowledge and insights flooded his mind. He discerned that the knowledge pertained to Rowena Ravenclaw's studies on emotions, imagination, and the soul. However, the focus was not on controlling the mind and soul, but on the power residing within emotions and imagination. In this world, the efficacy of magic is determined through imagination, and emotions can amplify the power of spells. For instance, apparition requires the wizard to visualize their destination and possess the determination, emotion, to reach it. Casting the unforgivable curses demands inner malice, while transformation spells rely on visualizing the desired outcome. Even ordinary spells can be strengthened through emotions. The most profound love can create a protective guardian that endures for over a decade. The ancient magic, mastered by a transfer student at Hogwarts Legacy, is driven purely by emotion and imagination, mirroring the inadvertent magic used by wizard preschoolers. The specific effects depend on the user's thoughts, but the challenge lies in its control. This form of magic is difficult to manage, lacks constraints, and cannot execute precise operations. Ultimately, what the transfer students confront is an orb of energy filled with malevolent thoughts. Essentially, the emotion itself imbued with malevolence. From the insights provided by the diadem, it was clear that Rowena Ravenclaw's final research before her demise revolved around the power of emotions and imagination. Imagination is the process of conceptualizing and shaping magic, while magic itself fills the conceptual framework to manifest. Emotions appear to function similarly to magic. During her exploration, she discovered that the power of emotions is not exclusive to wizards but also exists in ghosts. Essentially, the existence of ghosts stems from obsession, a form of intense and persistent emotion. This led Rowena Ravenclaw to a groundbreaking hypothesis. If a ghost is fundamentally emotion plus soul, could actively harnessing the power of emotion and merging it with the soul grant eternal life? The quest for eternal life is a common desire. Rowena Ravenclaw became engrossed in this research, even using fragments of her soul and the power of her emotions to create a new spirit body to test her theory. However, she quickly realized a flaw. The newly created spirit body was incapable of generating new emotions. Human emotions evolve with time and environment, but a ghost's emotions are fixed, stemming solely from the obsession that preceded its transformation and remaining unchanged. Rowena pondered, what is the difference between such an existence and death? Thus, she embarked on a quest to find ways to actively generate emotional power. She believed that emotions were rooted in the physical body, so she endeavored to construct a physical form for a spirit. Although she succeeded in creating a body that could house the spirit, allowing it to exist as if it were alive, this new body was incapable of generating emotions on its own. Essentially, she had created a living ghost. Following this, Rowena Ravenclaw's research yielded few results. Her experiments largely ended in failure, and her entire line of inquiry reached a dead end. Her final contribution was the invention of a soul storage device intended to preserve her soul and research findings for future generations, in the hope that someone might resurrect her using this knowledge. It seems that in any world, once a mage attains a certain level of power, they begin to contemplate immortality, Ethan mused after absorbing the memory. He reflected on various figures from different realms who sought eternal life, such as Kel'Thuzad from World of Warcraft, who turned to the Lich King, wizards from D&D who pursued lichdom through the Pot of Souls, and Voldemort's experiments with Horcruxes. Upon donning the Ravenclaw diadem, Ethan's understanding of wizardry deepened significantly. His wizard level increased by 2, and he gained insight into the study of emotions and souls. He discovered that the method for creating a ghost bore a striking resemblance to the process for summoning a certain high-level entity from his memories. This led him to understand the heroic spirit creation ritual. The heroic spirit creation ritual involves combining a vast amount of soul magic power as the spiritual base, the soul of the heroic spirit as the core, and the legend of the heroic spirit as the framework. When these three elements are united, a heroic spirit is born. Ethan was astounded by this revelation. Heroic spirits, transformed into legendary heroes after death and revered as objects of faith, possess power, independent thought, and the capacity for emotion, unlike ghosts. This realization suggested that Rowena Ravenclaw's dream of creating a spiritual entity capable of emotion was indeed achievable through the creation of heroic spirits. The key difference between heroic spirits and ghosts lies in their foundations. Heroic spirits are sustained by legends and beliefs, whereas ghosts are driven by obsession. With Ethan's newfound knowledge of the heroic spirit creation ritual, he pondered whether he could fulfill Ravenclaw's long-held wish, provided he could find her soul. After this series of discoveries, Ethan left the room of requirement, resuming his regular routine of study and rest as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. However, at midnight, he awoke and quietly made his way to the common room, ensuring his roommates were asleep. The common room was deserted. Seizing the opportunity, Ethan placed the crown on the head of the Ravenclaw bust. To his surprise, the crown fit perfectly, aligning seamlessly with the texture of the statue's hair. The secret lies here, after all, he thought. As soon as the crown settled, it underwent a transformation, shedding any semblance of decay and revealing its true form as if it had been meticulously restored. It was a delicate and complex golden crown, adorned with a pattern on the forehead that depicted an eagle soaring high. Its wings were crafted from countless sparkling diamonds, and the eagle's belly was inlaid with a huge, dark blue gem. The edges of this gem reflected dazzling light. Engraved along the bottom edge of the crown was Ravenclaw's famous motto, "Extraordinary wisdom is mankind's greatest wealth." The properties of the crown had transformed. Ravenclaw's diadem, a legendary object, Ravenclaw's lifelong masterpiece. This intricate silver diadem has revealed its true power. The wearer's intelligence, perception, and charisma all receive a +6 enhancement bonus for casting spells, level +3, and it enables the wearer to see through all illusions, as if using true seeing. Ethan noticed that there were 2 more identical sapphires beneath the center of the crown, one round and the other shaped like a water drop. Simultaneously, the magical aura that Ethan had previously sensed in the statue vanished, with those auras now seeming to be concentrated within these 2 gems. Upon touching the orb, Ethan confirmed that the drop-shaped gem functioned like an energy storage device, containing the power of emotions, calmness, love, curiosity, melancholy, joy. It appeared that a person's myriad thoughts were blended together and infused into it all at once. Helena had mentioned that the loving sensation she felt in the statue seemed to emanate from this gem. The round gem resembled a magical item akin to the Soul Stone, harboring the soul of Ravenclaw himself. Chapter 114. Just when Ethan touched the Soul Stone, a somewhat cold voice sounded not far away. "Hello, Ethan Green." Ethan followed the sound and saw a translucent and graceful figure sitting on the sofa in the lounge not far away. She possessed a stunning visage, tall and full-figured, with black hair cascading down her back like a waterfall. Her facial features were exceptionally delicate, but it was her pair of breathtaking eyes that were most captivating. Their penetrating gaze, gleaming like the sharpest sword, was so beautiful it was almost intimidating. Ethan recognized her as Rowena Ravenclaw at a glance, for she bore a striking resemblance to the bust beside her. However, unlike the statue, she showed no signs of aging in her spiritual form, and her demeanor was far more majestic. "Finally, a greedy raven has obtained my relic," Rowena Ravenclaw said in a poetic and ethereal voice. "Thousands of years have passed since my silence began." Ethan understood the meaning of her words. The literal translation of Ravenclaw is Raven's Claw, with the hidden meaning being greedy predator. "I'm sorry, but my predecessors didn't live up to expectations, and decades ago your crown was turned into a Horcrux, which delayed your awakening until today," Ethan said, bowing to Rowena Ravenclaw to show respect. Whether it was because of her status as a formidable founder of the Academy or as a captivating woman, Ethan had a favorable impression of Ravenclaw. "Being able to uncover the secrets within the crown, I think you have earned the right to call me Dean, or Rowena, if you prefer," Rowena Ravenclaw said, specifically correcting the name he used. "Of course, Rowena," Ethan replied, immediately taking the hint. He noticed a smile in the eyes of the spirit before him when he addressed her directly. It seemed that despite her majestic and indifferent appearance, the Dean's spirit longed for closeness and friendship. Combining the memory about Rowena's experiments obtained from the crown and recalling Rowena's demeanor in those memories, Ethan realized that this seemingly aloof Dean was essentially an academic homebody. Such individuals appear indifferent, distant, and detached, possessing a rich inner world and capable of enduring, even enjoying, solitude. Yet they also crave connections and friendships. This analysis was supported by the friendship between Rowena Ravenclaw and Helga Hufflepuff. If Rowena was the quintessential scholarly introvert, then Helga Hufflepuff was the epitome of a social butterfly, exuding warmth and kindness to everyone, including Rowena, who was drawn to such unreserved and unconditional kindness. Ethan could even imagine scenarios where Hufflepuff, concerned for Ravenclaw, who was engrossed in her experiments and often stayed up late, would coax her out of the tower to ensure she rested properly. "The truth is, I can't stay like this for long, Ethan," Rowena said, unaware of Ethan's inner thoughts. "You should be well aware that being a ghost is not my ideal form of existence. Therefore, I will try my best to enter the ghost form as little as possible. As the heir to the crown, I hope you can continue to advance my research and discover the ideal state of existence for the spirit body, allowing it to truly live in the world," she continued, looking intently at Ethan's face. "Of course, Rowena. Since I've accepted your crown, it is my responsibility." Ethan nodded in agreement, his words brimming with confidence. He already had a method in mind. In fact, after confirming the real existence of Rowena Ravenclaw's soul, Ethan considered the possibility of transforming it into a heroic spirit. The three elements of a heroic spirit: soul, legend, and low. With the spiritual base intact and her soul preserved, Rowena Ravenclaw's legacy is well known throughout the wizarding world. As one of the four founders of Hogwarts, her reputation, alongside the school's continuous production of graduates, ensures her memory and influence endure. Only Merlin holds a more esteemed position and the magical community, his status unparalleled, akin to that of Jesus among muggles. This makes Rowena an ideal candidate for a heroic spirit. The primary consideration now is the spirit base. Upon receiving Ethan's firm commitment, Rowena nodded in approval. "May my wisdom and the power of the crown aid you," she said. "Additionally, please look after Helena. This responsibility falls to you as the crown's inheritor. Then, strive well, Junior. Forgive me for not being able to stay by your side for now." As she prepared to revert to her ghostly state and return to the Soul Stone, Ethan called out, "Wait, Rowena. A year ago, I promised Helena I would uncover the secret hidden within this statue for her. Why not meet her before you depart? Now is not the time, Rowena replied. However, we shall meet again, I trust you. With a smile, her figure began to fade until she vanished completely. Moments later, a ghost bearing a striking resemblance to Rowena, about 79% similar, phased through the wall into the lounge. It was Helena Ravenclaw. Ethan Green, it's you, she exclaimed upon seeing the boy. Did you notice anything unusual during your stay here? Then her eyes fell on the crown in Ethan's hand. Oh my God, you found it, the crown! Thank heavens! Her excitement was palpable, and in its complete form, no less. You fully unlocked its power. It's been ages since I've seen it like this. After calming down from her initial excitement, Helena noticed Ethan's puzzled look and proceeded to explain. In her memory, the diadem of Ravenclaw exhibited its full power only when worn by Rowena herself or her true descendants. In the hands of others, it merely provided a slight increase in intelligence and mana. When I stole the crown from my mother, it didn't reveal its true power in my hands, she confessed. I took it as a sign of my mother's indifference towards me, which led me to flee to Albania. You know the rest, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. Ethan, thank you for returning the crown and rectifying my grave mistake, Helena expressed her gratitude. The fact that the crown has revealed its true form to you signifies that you are a true descendant of my mother. I misunderstood you back then, and I'm sorry. It's okay, Helena. I've moved past that. Ethan reassured her, symbolically patting her shoulder despite not being able to physically touch her. Wiping away her tears, Helena then inquired, Earlier, I sensed a familiar and comforting presence in the lounge. Was that the crown's doing? Ethan hesitated before deciding to tell her the truth about Rowena's soul still existing and the plan for her resurrection. So, my mother is still alive and has a chance to return to this world? Helena's concern for why her mother hadn't visited her one last time was overshadowed by the prospect of her resurrection. You're right, Helena. Miss Rowena does indeed have a plan for her return, and the likelihood of its success is significant. As long as she continues to experiment step by step, it's very possible to find a way to make the spirit form immortal. At least, that's my judgment, Ethan replied. Helena's face lit up with happiness upon hearing this. She hesitated for a moment before bowing solemnly to Ethan. You are the genius of this generation and her rightful heir. In my heart, no one is more suited to realize her long-cherished wish than you, she said earnestly. So, I'm asking you, please help her, okay? Before Ethan could respond, Helena quickly added, Although I'm just a ghost and don't possess much ability, if you agree to help her, I swear I will serve you or your descendants forever. Ghosts, while not possessing complete emotions, maintain a permanent existence unless something happens to them. Such an oath from a ghost is indeed very solemn, highlighting the deep love between mother and daughter. One offers an artifact, and the other pledges loyalty. Given these circumstances, Ethan found no reason to refuse. Upon reflection, Ethan realized that creating a heroic spirit could indeed offer many benefits. For instance, using Rowena Ravenclaw's identity could easily deceive others. She could serve as his assistant or even become the spirit of a magic tower. After all, heroic spirits possess superior computational abilities and can perform many tasks that humans cannot. In essence, whether as an assistant, a magician, or a formidable ally, the heroic spirit would be an invaluable asset. Thus, Ethan nodded towards Helena, saying, Okay, I promise you. Then he turned his gaze to where Rowena had vanished. You're right, we will meet again, he murmured, thinking of Rowena Ravenclaw. Chapter 115. After receiving Ethan's promise, Helena left happily. Ethan was left lying on the bed alone, lost in thought. Indeed, for someone who has mastered the heroic spirit creation ritual, creating a heroic spirit is not a difficult task, and Rowena Ravenclaw is arguably the most suitable candidate in the world for such a creation. However, Ethan faced an unresolved question. Where would the spirit base come from? Magic alone was not the answer. No matter how Ethan tried, squeezing out magic power of a heroic spirit level was not feasible. What he aimed to create was a heroic spirit, not a mere servant. Therefore, he needed not just a vast amount of magic power, but something more, something forged from worship and belief. In the Xingyue world, where the heroic spirit system is well developed, this power is naturally collected by the heroic spirit constellation. However, in the Harry Potter world, there is no such convenience as the heroic spirit constellation, nor is there an entity like 307, Alea tirelessly collecting the souls of heroes. So the question remained, where could he find the spiritual base? This dilemma preoccupied Ethan for several days, causing him to be absent-minded, even during the Quidditch match against Hufflepuff. Despite his distraction, it didn't stop him from dominating the game. However, his nonchalant attitude allowed his opponents to break through his defenses, especially when he was guarding Zhang Chu, inadvertently blocking Hufflepuff's captain and seeker, Cedric Diggory, from getting close to her until she caught the golden snitch. "I know we're not on your level, but that doesn't mean you can treat us with disdain," Cedric Diggory confronted Ethan outside the locker room after the game. He glanced towards the Ravenclaw women's locker room as he spoke. "In Quidditch, strength may be respected, but that doesn't give you the right to disrespect your competitors. If you're preoccupied with academic issues, perhaps the library would be a better place for you." Cedric then made a pointed remark about Ethan. "No matter how many points you score, you'll never earn the sincere admiration of fans with that attitude." As Cedric turned to leave, Ethan caught him by the wrist. Still under the effect of his bull power, buff from the match, Ethan's grip caused Cedric pain. "Repeat your last sentence," Ethan demanded. Their confrontation attracted the attention of onlookers. Although the dispute was verbal, the gathering crowd was intrigued. Near the women's locker room, Marietta whispered to Zhang Chu, "Don't you think Cedric Diggory looks a bit handsome, daring to speak to Ethan like that?" Zhang Chu appeared uninterested. "Your taste is peculiar. How could you be attracted to someone like him?" "What's wrong with Diggory?" Marietta retorted, slightly annoyed. "No one in Hufflepuff surpasses him in looks. It's unrealistic to compare everyone to Ethan." She continued, "Besides, Ethan is surrounded by many girls. You've been close to him lately, yet he barely notices you." Zhang Chu felt disheartened by the remark, but quickly regained her resolve. After all, Ethan's charm was undeniable. From the moment he joined the school, she had been captivated by him. Initially, she found him cute, but over time, as he matured, his handsomeness made her heart flutter. She couldn't let such an attractive boy slip away. People like Cedric Diggory, she mused, reflecting on the qualities that set Ethan apart. Marietta was still singing praises of Diggory's masculinity when Zhang Chu immediately countered, "No matter how manly he is, it won't stop him from being unable to breach Ethan's defense on the field. I've seen it firsthand. Regardless of how Diggory attempted to break through, even with physical force, Ethan blocked him firmly. Ethan was so composed that he could still ponder over problems, his focus unwavering. You haven't been shielded by Ethan like that. I believe that's what true manliness and security are about." Perhaps because the women's locker room was too close, or maybe the girls had inadvertently raised their voices. Either way, their argument inadvertently reached Ethan's ears. He looked up and caught sight of Diggory's displeased expression. It was clear he had overheard. Being told to his face that he was inferior to another man, especially by a girl, was a blow to Cedric Diggory's pride. His ego bruised, Diggory snapped at Ethan with a challenge. "I won't repeat myself. If you're so confident, prove it now. The difference in our combat abilities doesn't matter to me." Ethan, however, was not the least bit angered. To him, getting angry over such trivial matters was unimportant. What mattered was finding answers to the questions plaguing his mind. So, he calmly asked Diggory to repeat his earlier statement. "Cedric, repeat the last thing you said." Despite wanting to argue back, Diggory was taken aback by the indifference and the hidden depth of authority in Ethan's gaze. It struck a chord within him, reminding him of Ethan's feat of defeating the Chimera single-handedly. Realizing he was no match, Diggory's earlier defiance softened into a reluctant admission. "I already said it, so I won't repeat it. If you dare, go ahead now." Not that, the sentence before it, Ethan's tone remained indifferent, yet internally, he was quite pleased. A simple mental shock had subtly shifted Diggory's attitude. Sure enough, Diggory complied. "I said, people like you, no matter how many points they score, will never earn the genuine admiration of fans." Ethan, having heard what he wanted, nodded and said nothing more. At this moment, Diggory was desperate to leave. Zhang Chu's gaze, which once thrilled him, now felt like a scorching ray, making him burn with embarrassment. He wished to vanish, but, with Ethan blocking his way, he had no choice but to stay. Then, something else added to his discomfort. "Is this your definition of manliness?" Zhang Chu teased Marietta, a hint of pride in her voice. "Now you see who truly embodies masculinity." Faced with such mockery from the girl he admired, Cedric Diggory couldn't hold back any longer and asked Ethan, "Can I go now?" Unexpectedly, Ethan simply looked up and responded, "Why are you still here?" Diggory, filled with anger and humiliation, wanted to retort, but ultimately held back and left the locker room in low spirits. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to ponder over the exchange, reflecting on the words that had been said. Chapter 1 and 16, Emotion and Adoration. In Ethan's mind, the words emotion and adoration danced over and over again. Adoration, emotion, he pondered. Isn't adoration itself a form of emotion? He considered how gods gain the faith of humans and monsters, the fear of humans, both utilizing the power of emotions. Gods transform faith into divine power, monsters turn fear into demonic power, and magic directly harnesses the power of emotions. Even the Shadow Realm in the world of Warcraft squeezes this power from the soul. The essence of these powers, whether it's the power of emotions, belief, fear, or anima, is fundamentally the same, Ethan realized. This led him to wonder why he couldn't simply go to a place where faith congregates, like a church, or where extreme emotions erupt, like a casino, to gather strength. However, he quickly dismissed the idea, recognizing it couldn't be that straightforward. Observing various worlds, no gods or powerful beings resorted to such methods. The god of war collects thoughts on the battlefield, the god of Dionysus gathers power in carnivals, and gods absorb the faith of believers who chant their divine names. This indicates that absorbing emotional power beyond one's capacity is detrimental. Yet, in the Shadow Realm, anima is common, and the power of faith acquired by gods can be transferred. Devils and demons even trade this power as currency, showing that different emotional powers can be transformed into a pure and universal form through priesthood, talents, etc. In other words, to obtain a large amount of emotional power, one must either obtain specific types of energy through faith, clergy, talents, etc., or seek out general emotional power, Ethan concluded. He humorously considered starting a cult of Ravenclaws, but quickly dismissed the idea as beneath him. If not joining a cult, the alternative would be to find a source of ready-made, large-quantity, pure emotional power. But where could such a source exist in this world? Suddenly, Ethan had an epiphany. "There really is such a place," he exclaimed. This place was not only filled with a large amount of relatively pure emotional power, but was also conveniently located near Hogwarts. In fact, it was right beneath it. Ethan was thinking of Hogwarts itself, specifically the ancient magical energy left underground, as depicted in Legacy of Hogwarts. The core of the entire story is related to this power. The protagonist of Hogwarts Legacy is a 5th grade transfer student, the last descendant of ancient magic. Ancient magic, which is mostly primitive spells that directly control the power of emotions, was nearly lost due to the darkening of the previous generation's descendants. Isadora Morgana, a descendant, used ancient magic recklessly, discovering the power contained in emotions. After gaining strength, she attempted to extract the power of others for her own use, a dangerous endeavor without consent. Her actions led to a catastrophe, and after turning dark, she was killed by her mentors. The power of the negative emotions she collected was sealed. The entire story of Hogwarts Legacy revolves around the struggle between the transfer student and a goblin named Landlock, whose ancestors helped create the secret vault that sealed the power of negative emotions. According to goblin tradition, the maker of an item is naturally its owner, setting the stage for an epic confrontation. Therefore, the items crafted by goblins for wizards are essentially given to the wizard for temporary safekeeping, even if the wizard compensates with rewards and materials. Upon the wizard's death, the goblin has the right to reclaim their creations. Following this tradition, the malevolent goblin Landlock sought to unlock a secret vault, break its seal, harness forbidden power, and exact revenge on the wizarding world on behalf of the goblins. In the climactic battle, Landlock, wielding this power of negative emotions, became immensely powerful, transforming into a flying dragon made of pure magical energy. It unleashed terrifying lava attacks, filling the entire underground chamber with lava. Had the transfer students not been sufficiently strong, Hogwarts itself might have been destroyed, underscoring the magnitude of this force. Ultimately, Landlock was defeated, and this formidable energy was left buried beneath Hogwarts. Hogwarts Legacy presents two possible outcomes. In the positive ending, the protagonist seals this power beneath Hogwarts. In the negative ending, the protagonist absorbs this power, becoming an incredibly powerful dark wizard. In this world, we should choose the path of kindness. Otherwise, we risk following in the footsteps of Dumbledore and Grindelwald. The transfer student could dominate the magical world alone. Given this, the underground cave is certainly worth investigating. Ethan, what are you pondering? We need to get to the auditorium. Siri's voice suddenly interrupted his thoughts. Turning around, he saw the concerned female witcher alongside Hermione, realizing he was already in the auditorium. It was lunchtime, and the young wizards, fresh from watching a football match, were indulging at the long table. Ethan had been brought here by Siri while lost in thought. Noticing Ethan's return to the present, Siri seized the moment to express her concerns. Although Cedric Diggory's criticisms are somewhat harsh, there's truth in his words. You can't keep doing this. It's too risky. Sorry, Siri, but I've been preoccupied with important matters, Ethan apologized, showing his softer side to those who cared about him, unlike his interactions with Cedric Diggory. What's been on your mind? Why aren't you focusing on your meal? Hermione inquired curiously. Ethan hesitated before sharing the discovery of the cave beneath Hogwarts. A secret map room? An underground hollow? Ancient magic? I haven't seen you for a few days, and you've already stumbled upon so many mysteries. Hermione exclaimed, both admiring and frustrated by Ethan's knack for finding trouble. You're not planning to sneak into that tunnel in the middle of the night again, are you? Hermione admired Ethan's ability to stir up trouble, even more so than Harry. While Harry enjoyed a bit of mischief, his capabilities limited him to smaller endeavors, relying on luck and the assistance of older wizards for anything larger. Ethan, however, was both willing and able to undertake significant challenges. Hermione found herself in a dilemma. As a rule-abiding girl aspiring to be a model student, she inherently disapproved of rule-breaking. Yet, deep down, she harbored an insatiable thirst for adventure, dreaming of achieving great things. I want to follow the rules, but also accomplish significant feats. No wonder I aspire to be the Minister of Magic someday. Once in that position, I could adhere to the rules while pursuing grand ambitions. Addressing Hermione's internal conflict, Ethan asked, "Are you coming or not?" "Of course I'm coming," Hermione responded eagerly. "Don't you dare leave me behind this time." Okay, I won't leave you behind," Ethan reassured her, gently patting her head. Comforted, Ethan then turned to Cirilla. "I will always be there for you if you need me." Siri gave Ethan a reassuring smile. "In that case, I'll be waiting for you at the entrance of the library at 8 o'clock tonight." Updated 5/4. Additional update 2353. It's not easy to release new books. Please support by ordering books, sending flowers, casting monthly votes, leaving comments, and offering rewards. If you have votes, please give them to me, the author. Your support is truly important and greatly appreciated. Chapter 117. At 8 o'clock in the evening, outside the library, Hermione and Cirilla had arrived early. They began chatting about ancient magic while waiting. However, as time ticked closer to their meeting time, Ethan was nowhere to be seen. "Why hasn't he come yet?" Hermione expressed her concern, noting, "He always arrives a few minutes early." "So that's why you came here early, right?" "That's very considerate, Miss Granger," Cirilla teased, sensing she had pinpointed a small inconsistency in Hermione's behavior. "Likewise, Senior Sister Leonlin," Hermione retorted, ready for a debate. Just as they were about to delve into another argument, Ethan emerged from the library. "Hey, you actually got in early. You were the one who asked us to arrive at 8 o'clock, Hermione said, a hint of dissatisfaction in her voice. "Don't worry, Miss Granger. Ethan must have his reasons," Cirilla interjected. "Siri is right, Hermione. Of course, I have my reasons," Ethan replied, holding up a book for them to see. The cover read, "True Explanation of the Jade Record. I used the excuse of borrowing a book to enter the restricted area earlier, set the spatial coordinates in advance, and then came out to meet you," he explained. The restricted area is seldom visited. We can't all enter together without raising suspicion. With the spatial coordinates set, we can teleport in. That makes sense. I understand now. Hermione apologized, then asked, "But why not come in the middle of the night when it's empty?" Good question, Hermione. The restricted book area is heavily guarded, especially after hours. There are multiple security measures, warning spells, and ghost patrols, Ethan explained, recalling the stringent security from Hogwarts Legacy. He preferred not to risk a real-life stealth mission. It's safer to claim that Madame Pince forgot to lock up after work. She's easier to bypass than the magical defenses, he added. Mrs. Pince would be sad to hear you say that, Cyrilla defended, showing concern for Mrs. Pince's feelings. That's a separate matter, Ciri. Besides, Mrs. Pince is quite fond of Lockhart, Ethan clarified. As they reached a secluded corner, Ethan initiated the teleportation, announcing, "Teleport rune activated." In an instant, they found themselves in front of an iron gate at the bottom of the forbidden book area. Hermione observed their surroundings, realizing they were in an old part of the library she had never seen before. The walls were adorned with portraits that remained still. An iron maiden stood in the corner, and a mermaid mummy was displayed on a central table. Behind them, stairs led up to the familiar parts of the forbidden book area. "We've teleported to the lower level of the forbidden book area," Hermione whispered in awe. "I thought only the headmaster could apparate within Hogwarts. How did you manage this?" "No, I can't apparate. Most of my space spells don't work within Hogwarts. I relied on the teleportation rune, which allows for fixed-point teleportation," Ethan explained. "That's quite impressive," Hermione said, looking at Ethan with admiration. He had achieved something most thought impossible. Ethan gestured for them to follow him to the end of the room, where a thick wooden door led to a huge stone storage room. Descending the spiral staircase, they entered a vast circular chamber, ready to explore the secrets it held. In the stone room, the only feature was a magical arched stone door at the center. According to Legacy of Hogwarts, a protagonist with ancient magical talents could trigger this door to reveal the true path to their destination. Today, Ethan stood before it, seeing nothing but a simple stone door. "Can you enter the secret room mentioned on the map by going down here?" Hermione asked, her eyes fixed on the stone door, brimming with curiosity. "Allaho Cave opens," she exclaimed, casting a lock-picking spell directly at the door. However, there was no response. The stone door wasn't locked. "Door open." Seeing her first attempt fail, Hermione to ride the open door curse, or as she jokingly referred to it, the kick down the door curse, which she had often used before. Yet, even this spell left the stone door unmoved. Not even a speck of dust was disturbed. Clearly, the protective spells on this stone door were of a high caliber, rendering all her opening spells ineffective. Hermione then attempted another spell, Open Sesame, but the door dismantling curse also failed to take effect. After a series of unsuccessful revealing spells, Hermione turned to Ethan, who had been deep in thought. The power of ancient magic was formidable, and the creator of this secret room was undoubtedly more powerful than Ethan was at present. It was clear that brute force or simple spells wouldn't open the door. However, Ethan was not limited to conventional magic. He had mastered a wide array of spells and techniques, allowing him to engage in unconventional strategies and dimensional attacks. Ethan noticed that, despite the door's robust protection, there was no magic preventing interference. This meant he could use the magical energy of the stone door to reverse engineer the space it led to once opened. This approach, leveraging the precise construction and analysis of spell effects, was a hallmark of arcane magic, which differed significantly from the more artful magic in the world of Harry Potter. Analysis portal. With his expertise, Ethan quickly determined the coordinates of the space beyond the door. Although teleportation was generally restricted near Hogwarts, the coordinates of such portals were inherently linked. Seizing this opportunity, Ethan used any door, following the existing coordinates between the portals, and effortlessly led them to their destination, bypassing the portal entirely. Upon arriving, they They found themselves in a dimly lit hall, its decoration lavish. The floor was made of smooth, vast marble, adorned with golden plant patterns that extended across the floor, stone pillars, and walls, giving the hall a uniquely splendid appearance. The hall was deserted, except for a small stone platform at the center, upon which sat a stone basin with a magic book floating above it. "Is this a pensieve?" Hermione gasped, recognizing it from her readings. The book mentioned that a pensieve allows people to view others' memories. Pensieves were exceedingly rare magical items, with only a few known to exist, such as those in the possession of the Ministry of Magic and the headmaster's office at Hogwarts. Curious, the trio approached the magic book, which opened on its own, releasing a trickle of silver liquid into the basin below. "Is that mercury?" Hermione inquired. "No, this is a memory, left for visitors to view," Ethan explained. Eager to uncover the intentions of those who left these memories behind, Ethan cast a protective spell around them. Then, the three leaned forward, immersing their heads in the pensieve, ready to dive into the past. Chapter 118, The Power of Ancient Magic. The memory faded quickly, and soon Ethan, Hermione, and Ciri lifted their heads from the depths of the pensieve. Hermione was the first to speak, her voice tinged with awe. "Ancient magic is so terrifying." Despite having heard about the formidable nature of ancient magic from Ethan, witnessing its power firsthand left both her and Ciri astounded. Even Ethan, who was more familiar with the concept, found himself slightly taken aback. The memory they had just witnessed was unlike any other. It originated not from a game, as Ethan had initially thought, but from a previous guardian of ancient magic, the protagonist of the game, a transfer student. This memory chronicled his journey of mastering ancient magic, his battles against a malevolent goblin, and his ultimate victory, which prevented the goblin from using ancient magic's legacy to wreak havoc on the magical world. Through this memory, Ethan saw the terrifying potential of harnessing evil emotions for power and witnessed ancient magic's manifestations in reality. From transforming adversaries into explosive barrels to summoning thunder to obliterate enemies, the array of spells was both awe-inspiring and chilling. The most notable spell was the Ava, Chain of Lightning, capable of marking and annihilating every enemy with an avatar death curse, a spell so lethal that even Voldemort deemed it extreme. The memory also detailed the battle's conclusion, where the transfer student chose not to absorb the power of negative emotions, but instead sealed them within an underground cavity. Hermione, with a slight frown, lamented the abrupt end of the memory and the absence of further clues. Ethan, however, corrected her, explaining that the memory did contain clues, but only those with ancient magic talents could perceive them. Ciri questioned if Ethan was unable to see these clues, to which he clarified that detecting a clue and being able to act upon it were distinct matters. As a time traveler and an outsider to this world, Ethan doubted his eligibility to inherit ancient magic. Sensing their disappointment, Ethan reassured them with a smile. "No, I still have a way." He elaborated on the use of prophecy spells in Wizardry, contrasting the vague prophecies of the Harry Potter world with the precision of arcane magic. These spells could reveal what one sought to know, including an adversary's hostility, identity, motives, weaknesses, and beliefs. Ethan was confident in his ability to uncover the inheritance of ancient spells and the map's secret room leading to the underground cavity using specific magic. However, this spell takes a while, so let's have something to eat and rest here first, Ethan suggested. He then proceeded to set up a table complete with chairs, snacks, and black tea, all taken from his wallet. Hermione noticed a few magic books thoughtfully placed on the tea table, presumably to keep her entertained. Ciri, observing the elaborate tea party setup, couldn't help but comment, "You really do carry all these things with you all the time, don't you? It's quite the exquisite lifestyle." Ethan's preparation for the spell, coupled with the comfort of their surroundings, underscored the seriousness with which he approached the quest for ancient magic. As they settled in for their impromptu tea party, the air was filled with a sense of anticipation and curiosity about the secrets they were about to uncover. Ethan said matter-of-factly, "Now that you've become a mage, why not treat yourself well?" Magic, he believed, should make one's life more convenient. Hermione, too, found the scene before her a bit exaggerated, Yet her curiosity was piqued by how a small purse could contain such a large set of tables and chairs. How much space has been extended inside this purse, she wondered. Ethan noticed her intrigued gaze and offered, "If you want one, I can give it to you as a Christmas gift. But for now, girls, please wait for a moment and enjoy your late-night snack." With that, he stepped aside to prepare his magic. Wentworth, Isla, Hermione, and Siri curiously watched his movements, indulging in small cakes. "I hope tonight's exploration serves as a warm-up," Siri said slowly, devouring a piece of matcha cake. "This way I can eat them all without worrying about gaining weight." Hermione was momentarily stunned after hearing her words. She hesitated before putting a strawberry macaron in her mouth, unsure if she should continue eating. Siri laughed at her dilemma and reassured, "It's okay, Granger. Feel free to eat. With your figure, you really don't need to worry." Hermione wanted to retort, but upon comparing herself to Siri, she found she couldn't argue. Damn it, why is the gap so big? Frustrated, she decided to channel her emotions into her appetite, hoping the desserts would help her gain some curves. As the girls enjoyed their treats, Ethan's magic was already at work. He activated the Detect Location spell, a 6th-level prophecy system that allowed him to see and hear a specified location, understanding what was happening there. The success of the spell depended on his familiarity with the location and any physical connection he had to it. Initially, Ethan's chances of finding the secret room on the map through Detect Location were slim, as he only knew about it from the game and had never visited it in person. However, the memory from the pensieve practically took him there, significantly increasing the success rate of the spell. As the ceremony reached its climax, Ethan focused on the magical mirror before him. The fog within the mirror began to clear, revealing the location of the map secret room beneath the Hogwarts clock tower area. With this discovery, Ethan promptly concluded the ceremony. "Come on, girls, I think I've found our target," he announced an hour later. "Is it finally over? I've waited so long I could have wilted," Siri joked. "Let's hurry. Staying up late could cause acne," Hermione added. The trio quickly packed up and, taking the memory book from the pensieve, returned to the library's exterior using the teleportation rune. Hogwarts was under curfew, so they used the invisibility technique to stealthily make their way to the sewer under the clock tower. "Didn't you say the map's secret room is here?" Hermione asked, scanning the sewers for the secret room's entrance. Ethan tried various spells like Reality Revealed, Quick Reveal, and Scape in Appearance, but to no avail. Hermione even used the apparition charm and the secret door detection charm Ethan had taught her, but they found nothing. "Without a true guide, it's indeed impossible to open the door," Ethan concluded, something he had anticipated. He never intended to enter the map secret room through conventional means. Siri also confirmed, "No, there's nothing here. No traces of secret doors or ventilation ducts. What should we do?" Ethan smiled, encouraging them to think outside the box. "Remember how I got past the stone door before? Why must we always follow the same line of thought? You have to understand, this isn't a NUT exam. Since we can't follow the question maker's ideas, we have the freedom to completely change our approach." After hearing this, the two companions' eyes sparkled with excitement as they turned their gaze towards Ethan. They watched as Ethan waved his magic wand, causing the bricks and stones on the ground to separate, revealing the underlying rock formations and soil. Then he stepped forward, took hold of both of them, and began casting the sorcery of the stone. 2 years prior, they had come to realize that a peculiar power had enveloped them. Under Ethan's guidance, they submerged into the rock and soil, moving through it as effortlessly as fish swim through water, leaving no tunnel in their wake. The duration of their journey was uncertain, but eventually they encountered a barrier, a wall with traces of brickwork in front of them. Ethan once again wielded his wand, causing the brick wall to part, unveiling a corridor lined with bricks and stones. He pulled them forward, and they leaped into the corridor. Hermione and Siri immediately recognized this tunnel from their previous experiences with the pensieve. In essence, they had traversed directly through the soil and forcibly entered the secret chamber depicted on the map by breaching the wall. The method they employed, apart from using the Thor stone traveling technique, bore a striking resemblance to the actions of tomb robbers who dig their way into hidden chambers. Chapter 119, Unearthing the Secret Passage. What Ethan now uncovered by digging the hole was the passage leading to the map's secret room. The other end of this passage leads to the sewers of Hogwarts, which is where Ethan and the others had come from. Walking back along the passage, Ethan discovered that this secret passage had been sealed. It turned out that after the negative power of ancient magic triggered a significant trap and was sealed under the map's secret room, the previous generative guardians decided to bury the secrets of ancient magic completely. To prevent accidental discovery by the school's young wizards, they blocked the secret passage leading here from the castle. Now that I have found this place, there is no need to seal the secret passage anymore, Ethan said. He waved his wand and used the levitating spell to clear the ruins. Siri and Hermione also started to work together, quickly clearing the rubble and ruins. Then, Ethan placed his hand close to the sealed wall and said, "Stone shaping." Under the influence of magic, the thick walls made of bricks and stones were reshaped, and a door-shaped outline appeared before them. Soon, the outline transformed into a real stone door. Immediately afterward, he cast Secret Room Technique, Six-Ring Arcane Lock, and Sclerosis. The first spell prevented light and sound from leaking out, ensuring confidentiality. The second was an advanced secret lock that magically secured the stone door, ensuring it could only be opened in a designated manner and not pried open unless the door was forcibly broken down. The last, hardening technique, was to prevent the stone gate from being forcibly breached. After clearing their way out, the trio walked towards the other end of the corridor, opened the magnificent door, and saw the glorious hall they remembered. The hall was situated in a vast rock cave, supported by tall stone pillars. The railings and handrails on the stone pillars and around them were still adorned with the same plant-style metal outlines. Between the stone pillars stood 4 tall pictures, which were originally normal portraits, but now they were just empty frames. Both the background and characters were missing. In the center of the cave was a large, smooth ground, resembling both a mirror and a calm lake. Upon entering the hall, they immediately noticed a high platform on the railing with a square flat plate standing on it, as if waiting for something to be placed upon it. Ethan placed the memory book he had taken from the pensieve on this table, as he had done in the game. Then, the hall was awakened, and the lake began to shimmer with starlight. Countless bright spots spread out under the dark mirror, sinking one after another, and a miniature model of Hogwarts and its surroundings appeared. When Ethan stepped on this ground, it was like stepping on water, with ripples of light appearing. At this moment, he felt like a giant in the clouds, overlooking the entire Hogwarts. Ethan looked around, seeing the train station, Hogwarts Castle, the Black Lake, the Forbidden Forest, Hogsmeade Village, all in sight, almost equivalent to a 3D holographic sandbox. No wonder this place was called the Map Secret Room. In fact, the reason this Hogwarts map existed here was to locate nearby ancient magical energy nodes. As the 3 of them entered the secret room on the map, the characters in the 4 huge paintings returned one after another. From the pensieve, they learned their identities. The first was an old man with a goatee and a hexagonal scholar's hat named Percival Rackham, who hailed from Hufflepuff and was the divination professor at Hogwarts. The second was a stout man who appeared honest and sincere, wearing a round beret, named Charles Lukewood, a transfiguration professor from Slytherin. The third person was an Indian dressed in purple clothes and covering his head, named Senbakar, a professor of magical zoology, and comes from Slytherin. The last one is a red-haired middle-aged woman wearing red clothes, Nia Fitzgerald, one of the former headmasters of Hogwarts, from Ravenclaw. In fact, there is also a record about them in Hogwarts, a school history, but it obviously does not mention the part about ancient magic. Has a new generation of guardians finally emerged? The portrait of the goatee, Rackham, had just finished speaking when he immediately realized something was wrong. You didn't come in through the normal way? The problem was also seen in the portrait of the Indian male, Bakar. You don't have ancient magic in you. You are not the new generation of inheritors. The expressions of the other 2 portraits also became grave. The portrait of Principal Fitzgerald said seriously, "I'm sorry, children. This is not a place for you to explore. No matter how you got here, there is nothing you want here, so please leave now." "Hello, 4 professors." Ethan ignored their repulsive attitude and stepped forward to say hello. It is now 1993. 100 years have passed since the appearance of the previous generation of Guardians, and we are the current generation of students at Hogwarts. The portrait of the fat man, Rookwood, sighed. "Has another 100 years passed? You actually know about the Guardian?" Ethan nodded. "Of course, we not only know about the Guardian, but we also know what the Guardian has sealed here. In fact, that's what we're here for." The faces of the 4 portraits suddenly became serious when they heard this. The power of evil emotions was the source of all chaos 100 years ago, and it was the fundamental reason why ancient magic was almost extinct. These little wizards actually said that they came here for this reason. "Do you know what you are talking about?" Fitzgerald's portrait became serious. "That power is not something you should be exposed to at your age." "Of course, I know what that power means," Ethan retorted, "and I know better that it is not a good thing to let this power stay under Hogwarts." Finding a good-sounding reason before doing something is a good habit developed by Ethan. The portrait of Rookwood sighed. "You are right, children. We have no choice." The portrait of the Indian man didn't think so. "Even so, it's not a power that can be touched. We Guardians can't do anything about it, let alone you." Hearing this, Hermione was convinced. Why do you think Ethan can't do anything about it? Accustomed to Ethan's omnipotent self-created magic, Hermione had inexplicable confidence in this boy. But obviously, the portraits of these professors did not share this belief. The portrait of Principal Fitzgerald made the final decision. "Since you refuse to leave, we have to take some coercive measures." Lackham's portrait comforted. "Don't be afraid, children. We will not hurt you. We will only erase your relevant memories. Although it is inappropriate to do so, we have no choice in order to prevent the secret from being leaked." As soon as he finished speaking, bursts of blue-white light began to emit from all around the hall. Then, one figure after another fell from the sky and landed on the ground, causing tremors. They were metal demon statues. From the appearance, they looked like heavily armored warriors, the shortest being 2 meters high. The armor on their bodies had the same style as the main hall. The armor seemed to be entangled with vines made of metal, twisting into artistic arcs, and with a blue light core. They looked gorgeous and majestic. These golems, either raising their swords or their warhammers, walked towards the 3 of them, step by step. This was the defense mechanism of the secret room on the map. These golems were not only the trial object of the Guardian, but also the defensive force of the secret room of the map. If an ordinary little wizard saw the tall golems, he would probably faint. But what was beyond the expectations of the 4 portraits was that the 3 people in front of them were not nervous at all. The boy, leading the group, the oldest girl, brandished a silver sword with determination. The boy, Ethan, faced them with a calm smile, commending their readiness. "Well done, professors. This will show you why we are capable of handling such power." He gestured towards the map, revealing the location of the secret room they were discussing. Chapter 120. The 4 portraits were about to witness a battle scene unlike any they had seen before. Golems usually possess various resistances, and it's best to use spells with the force field attribute to deal with them, Ethan advised before the battle commenced. Hermione and Cyrilla nodded in understanding. The so-called force field is a purely physical effect sustained by magic. It represents the manifestation of pure physical force without any mass. As such, this type of pure force cannot be countered through attribute resistance, but only through pure physical defense. Spells such as Arcane Missile, Shield, and Magic Explosion fall under the force field category. For artificial constructs like golems, wizards can imbue them with magic resistance, elemental resistance, and more during their creation. However, to block force field attacks, they must rely solely on the golem's physical structure. Cyrilla enhanced her arcane sword with a force field ball, a weapon Ethan had crafted for her after defeating the Chimera. Hermione abandoned the disarming spell in favor of casting Arcane Missile. Ethan, leveraging his dual expertise as both a druid and a mage, applied a druid spell, Rust Claw, to his sword, targeting the metallic golems specifically. They positioned themselves, ready for the impending confrontation. As the golems marked 417 approached, Ethan unleashed his second spell, Chain Lightning. A bolt of lightning, thick as an arm, erupted from his hand, striking the lead golem before jumping to the next nearest one. The lightning arced in this manner 6 times, hitting each golem in succession. The first golem was instantly reduced to a heap of parts, its internal structure devastated by the powerful electricity. The second managed to remain intact, albeit with scorched critical components. The third and fourth were enveloped in smoke, their exteriors charred, while the last 2 experienced significant joint discomfort. With just one spell, Ethan had thrown the entire team of golems into disarray. Seizing the moment, Ethan and Cyrilla charged forward. Ethan's sword sliced through a golem's waist, the metal corroding rapidly as if time itself had accelerated, turning to rust. The once sturdy armor crumbled under the swing of Ethan's sword, bisecting the golem. Cyrilla, dodging a hammer blow from another golem, struck its head with her sword. The impact was so powerful it seemed as though the golem had been hit by a siege ram, its head and shoulders crushed. Hermione's missile targeted the leg joints of another golem, bringing it to the ground. In just one encounter, the golems were utterly defeated. Ethan understood that demonstrating strength was far more effective than mere words. From the outset, he had no intention of directly persuading the old-fashioned wizards in the portraits. They believed their ancient magic was superior, viewing themselves as guardians. Their arrogance was palpable, but it reflected the reality that ancient magic was formidable, and modern magicians were perceived as unable to overcome these guardians. However, Ethan aimed to prove that ancient magic was not insurmountable. Humanity has its own legacy. They are not merely remnants left behind by the guardians. From beyond this world, humans have harnessed the power to defy the very fabric of reality. In Ethan's eyes, the golems were quite impressive. They were powerful, durable, and operated independently. Without Ethan and his friends' use of otherworldly magic, the young wizards at Hogwarts would have stood no chance against them. The key was that these golems seemed to be designed for mass production and use in large numbers, especially evident in the Guardian's trial. Acquiring the technology to create these golems would ensure a never-ending supply of troops for future conflicts. In less than 3 minutes, the first wave of golems was dismantled by the trio. The 4 individuals in the portrait were shocked by the spectacle. The headmistress, feeling the pressure, exclaimed, "These are not enough. We must present them with a real challenge." Soon after, a truly formidable opponent appeared. It was another golem, but unlike the previous ones, this was a colossal monster standing 5 to 6 meters tall. The weight of such a metal giant could easily reach 30 or 40 tons. Its arrival caused the ground to tremble. Faced with this behemoth, even Sheely felt overwhelmed. A metal golem of this size could easily overpower a fire dragon. It was in a completely different weight class. How could they possibly contend with such a formidable foe? Siri and Hermione looked towards Ethan, hoping for a solution. Ethan didn't let them down, instructing, "You two, step back and attack it with acid arrows. I'll handle the front." As the giant golem, wielding a massive sword, advanced towards Ethan, each step it took made the earth quake. Hermione and Siri retreated towards the door, while Ethan stood his ground in front of the golem. He conjured a spell, Acid Mist. Suddenly, a thick green mist enveloped the golem. The mist, upon contact with the golem's exterior or any fragments on the ground, emitted a hissing sound as it corroded the metal. The giant golem was completely shrouded in the acid mist. Under normal circumstances, a regular golem would have melted instantly. However, this was no ordinary golem. Its thick outer shell protected it from immediate corrosion. It aimed to defeat Ethan before succumbing to the acid. Raising its sword, the golem swung it towards Ethan. Unperturbed, Ethan leaped into the air, transforming into a giant eagle. He soared out of the sword's reach, then morphed again, this time into a chimera with the body of a lion, the tail of a snake, and the wings of an eagle. "Is he an animagus, or a magical creature animagus?" mused the portrait of Luke Wood, a professor of transfiguration, astonished by the transformation. Professor Bakar, an expert in magical zoology, speculated, "What kind of animagus is this? It possesses traits of a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake. Could it be a chimera?" Indeed, Ethan's ability to transform into a new species of chimera, even if only in animagus form, was remarkable. The art of becoming an animagus had been lost since ancient Greece, making Ethan's feat all the more extraordinary. Rackham, another portrait, noted the symbolic significance of Ethan's transformation. The elements of the chimera corresponded to the 4 houses of Hogwarts, suggesting Ethan embodied qualities from each house. This observation sparked further admiration and curiosity among the onlookers. During the recent battle and the deployment of the large-scale acid mist technique, the portraits observed Ethan and his companions with mixed feelings. However, Ethan was too preoccupied to concern himself with their opinions. His focus was solely on how to defeat the formidable opponent before them. Utilizing his ability to fly, he chose not to engage in close combat with the giant golem. Instead, Ethan soared around the statue, diving periodically to unleash thunderous breaths at its joints. The force of the thunder and lightning wreaked havoc within the golem's structure. Although it didn't crumble, the internal damage was significant. Steam and smoke billowed from its joints, and its movements became increasingly erratic. Despite its attempts to swing its weapon, the golem's clumsy efforts failed to connect with the agile chimera. On the rare occasions it did manage a hit, the chimera's remarkable regenerative abilities ensured it was quickly back to full strength. After nearly 10 minutes of relentless assault, the golem reached its breaking point. The continuous lightning attacks had devastated its critical components, while the acid mist technique and strong acid arrow had begun to corrode its outer shell, compromising its internal integrity. It could barely remain upright. Seizing the moment, Ethan dove from the cave's dome, targeting the golem's head with a decisive blow. This attack proved to be the final blow, causing the entire structure to collapse. Ethan Disby led the acid mist spell, landed in the hall's center, and reverted to his human form. Cyrilla and Hermione quickly joined him. Facing the portraits, Ethan declared confidently, "Now, professors, do you believe we are capable of handling the troubles below?" The portraits exchanged looks. Professor Bakar, the Indian male, spoke first. "Though you may not be well versed in ancient magic, your knowledge of magical creatures has impressed me. I believe you are qualified." Professor Lukewood, the portly man, added, "Your animagus abilities alone demonstrate potential equal to that of ancient magic itself. I acknowledge your strength." Professor Rackham, with his goatee, also agreed. "Lions, eagles, badgers, and snakes, courage, wisdom, kindness, and perseverance. You have indeed embodied the noble qualities of the 4 houses. I grant my approval." With her colleagues in agreement, Professor Fitzgerald, the last to speak, conceded, "I admit the power you wield is comparable to ancient magic. I hope your intentions are pure, though I harbor doubts about your ability to resolve this issue. Nonetheless, you have proven yourselves capable. Thus, I will allow you to proceed." Ethan hadn't anticipated that his animagus transformation, rather than his charming human's ability, would earn the professor's approval. Regardless, their path to the underground hollow was about to be revealed. The ground, which had appeared as smooth as water, began to transform, resembling water draining from a pool. As the level receded, a secret door beneath the surface was unveiled.